Oh, it's that. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So just place document here.
Gotcha.
On the mic. I call the August 1st, 2022 meeting of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors to order. Please join me in an invocation from Pastor Carey along with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Let us pray. Our gracious and heavenly Father, holy is your name. We seek this day for your will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. We pray for your presence to be tangible here at this county supervisors meeting. We ask that you bless each and every one of our county government leaders, and we thank you for their leadership. May their decisions today be beneficial for our county, for the businesses and the residences and the families of our county. May good reasoning rule as they meet together. In the name of Christ our Lord, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Johnson, are you with us?
I'm here, sir.
Supervisor Bishop, are you with us?
Here, thank you.
Thank you, supervisors. The Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3, 4, and 7. Motion and action to call for executive session to be held August 16th, 2022 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431.03A, 3, 4, and 7 to discuss items noticed on the agenda with asterisk.
So made.
Second.
You've heard that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Attorney Esplin, any pending litigation?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Committee or legislative reports? Supervisor Bishop?
I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Angus?
Nothing this morning, thank you.
Supervisor Johnson?
Nothing.
Supervisor Lingenfelter?
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Nothing this morning, thank you.
I attended the Workforce Development Board meeting in person in Lake Havasu City on Thursday. We heard a presentation on a software program that will provide a more seamless transition between the information that county staff puts in and the DES staff puts in, and filled some appointments, and those will be coming for confirmation to the board. County Manager report.
Good morning, Chairman and board members. No report today.
Thank you, sir. Approval of the minutes of the June 20th, 2022 Board of Supervisor meeting.
Motion to approve.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Call to the public. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, a public body may make an open call to the public during a public meeting subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on any issue within the jurisdiction of the public body. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the public body and may ask to review a matter and may ask that that matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the public body shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. Tanya Dowson. Wayne Hollins is on deck.
Good morning, Tanya Dowson, Mojave County taxpayer. Everyone is born with different strengths and weaknesses, either from nature or from the environment that they were born into. We are being groomed to believe that this is inequitable because some people have advantages that others don't. And this condition must be corrected by government, which is really the taxpayers. This is the second illustration is a popular mischaracterization of equality. Today, people are being taught that it's government's job to give everyone the same thing. In this case, blocks to stand on. This is seen by some as unfair because some are still better off than others. The reality is it's not the government's job to give people stuff. The government doesn't have anything to give that it hasn't first taken from someone else by force. All government can justifiably give is equal protection of our rights so people can peacefully earn what they need. The government makes sure the third illustration is the new ill-conceived notion of equity. The government makes sure everyone gets what they need to live a dignified life, or as Karl Marx said, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Where do the blocks come from? Government. Where does the government get the money for the blocks it gives away? The government gets the money it gives away from hardworking taxpayers. Taxes cut into our prosperity. Many people are forced to pay their taxes even though they may not have enough money left over to pay their medical bills, or car repair, or home repair, or clothes, etc. As a direct result of those taxes, medical staff, auto mechanics, home builders, seamstresses, and countless others have less work, and they buy fewer goods and services, and the ripple effect grows. Wild animals live by natural law and understand their natural rights. If you try to kill a wild animal, it will fight to survive. If you try to cage a wild animal, it will fight to be free. Wild animals even understand property rights to some degree. They will protect their offspring, their food, or even territory. How often have you heard kids fighting over a toy? That's one of the number one reasons kids fight, over a form of property rights. Conflict over property rights is one of the number one reasons adults fight as well. Countries even go to war over territory. Our rights to our property existed well before our government did. The number one reason for government is to protect our property rights, and that's why our government was created. Government redistributing our wealth is an act of aggression against the people. Please protect our property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Wayne Hollins. Chris Rodarty's on deck.
Good morning, Chairman and Supervisors. Wayne Hollins from Golden Valley. I remember why I quit coming here for a couple years, and I've just found out in the last few times I've been here. Mainly, I see we talk, but nobody's listening. I'm not sure that we even live in the same county, maybe not even the same state, but again, we have the water. The water's in the news all the time, but yet we fail to act. If we're going to put 1 million gallons of water in the aquifer, you got to start with the first gallon. And it's not just your responsibility to put that water into the ground for us. Everybody out here and everybody at home has responsibility to do that for themselves and for the good of everybody. So we do a lot of writing letters and go to meetings and stuff like that. That haven't put an ounce of water in the ground yet. In fact, we used resources to grow the trees to get the paper to do it on. So we missed a big opportunity in the last couple of days with all the rain we've had. I know I could have went boating in my backyard, and I did quite a bit to get as much water into the ground as I can on my property, and I see where I can do more. But we have the manuals to do that. We have the flood control. I'm not sure what flood they're controlling. I think they're more like the flood watchers. We need to put the water into the ground. We complain about the farmers taking the water out of the ground, but they're growing trees that give us air and clean up the atmosphere. They could have been growing alfalfa. And then we have money that we're going to improve the water systems, drill wells. What are we going to pump? Salty water? We've got to get water into the ground. It doesn't help to have a fantastic distribution system if you don't have anything to distribute. Everybody in the county needs to get busy on this and working towards the same goal. It's the problem with, it's easy to do, but it's just as easy not to do. So I would like to see something positive come about our water situation. Everybody knows about it, and we never do anything. I don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chris Rodarty.
Chris Rodarty, Mojave County taxpayer. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office according to the best of my ability, so help me God. This is the oath every public servant takes upon entering office. The oath is simple and straightforward. Nowhere are the words, "Take from the rich taxpayers and give to my poor constituents." Hidden in the fine print, you won't find the phrase, "To the best of my ability, I will continually sign off on and support unconstitutional edicts that promote the globalist agenda." There's no out clause stipulating that in the event an oath taker decides the philosophy of our Constitution, quote, frankly doesn't exist anymore, that it becomes okay to sell out we the people for a few pieces of silver. All of you sitting up there have taken the oath, yet in many cases you are in default of your contract. That's why we're up here twice a month, ditto, 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 and yes, ditto. Our country is at the crossroads. How many times have you heard us say this? We are not your enemies. We should all be on the same page. Each of you is a member of We the People. Each of you pays taxes. Think about it. You have children and grandchildren who will be living under the socialist regime you helped create. It takes courage to stand up, to preserve our republic, and yet you take the money with globalist strings attached, rationalizing that we've always done it this way, or if we don't take the money, someone else will. Have you heard about the courageous Cochise County supervisors who turned down $2 million in COVID cash? They did the right thing, so can you. Honor your oath. Vote no today on knuckling under to the 2030 globalist agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to move agenda item 48 ahead of the consent agenda. Ms. Lloyd.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Gould and Supervisors. A legislative action that occurred the prior year now requires that the audit firm present to the Board of Supervisors the audit report and any potential findings that they would have each year. So with that, I would like to welcome three persons joining the meeting today via Teams. Carla Wall will be joining us from the Auditor General's office. She is the Financial Audit Technical Manager. Stephanie Gerber is also from the Arizona Auditor General's office, and she's actually the director of the Financial Audit Division. And then Ben Herr represents the audit firm that the Auditor General's office had a contract with to perform Mojave County's independent financial audit. And he is a partner, a CPA with Fester and Chapman CPA LLC. So with that, I turn it over to the Auditor General's office. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to share my screen here and hopefully you'll be able to see my presentation. All right. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that now. I think we've got the presentation up. To introduce myself, I'm Carla Wall, and I'm a technical manager with the Arizona Auditor General. On behalf of the Arizona Auditor General, we appreciate the opportunity to meet with the board and to join Ben Herr with Fester and Chapman in presenting the 2021 audit results to you. Thank you for having us. Presenting the audit results opens the communication between the auditors and you, the county's governing body, who oversees the county's operations and financial and compliance objectives. I like to say how much we appreciate partnering with Ben and his team at Fester and Chapman, who actually conduct the county's audit. Ben will be sharing the 2021 audit results with you, but before he does, we'd like to explain our role as it relates to the audit. The Arizona Auditor General is responsible for conducting annual audits of all Arizona counties, or for causing those audits to be conducted. We sometimes need to contract audits to adjust for our staffing levels and other audit demands, and we select only quality CPA firms with experience in counties and how they operate in Arizona. We contracted with Fester and Chapman for the county's fiscal years 2020 through 2022 audits, but we maintain the ultimate responsibility for these audits. We're always available to consult with Fester and Chapman during the audit or to answer any of the county's questions. Once the audit's in its final stages, we review the county's draft audit reports prepared by Fester and Chapman to help ensure their accuracy and to help ensure they meet applicable standards as part of our due diligence in overseeing the county's audit. The county gets essentially 2 annual audits that are done together. First, they get a financial statement audit, and they also get a federal compliance audit. The financial statement audit includes the auditor's opinion on the county's financial statements that are presented in the annual financial report. The federal compliance audit, also refers to as the single audit report, includes the required financial statement and federal program internal control and compliance reports. It also includes the county's schedule of federal expenditures and the auditor's opinion on it. It also includes the auditor's opinion on the county's compliance with federal program requirements over each federal program that is required to be audited. Also, the single audit report is where you're going to see any findings noted during the financial or federal compliance audits, along with the county's responses to them. And Ben will cover these results as they relate to the fiscal year 2020 on audits automatic just momentarily. So we feel it's important for everyone to understand the standards that auditors must follow when conducting your county's and other government's audits. County's audit is subject to the various standards and requirements that are shown on this slide. Both the financial statement audit and federal compliance audit are conducted in accordance with standards published by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which are the same standards followed by CPAs when auditing private businesses and not-for-profit organizations. In addition, because the state and local governments receive and expend federal monies, auditors must also follow auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States, referred to as government auditing standards. And they also follow federal uniform guidance. Government auditing standards are followed for both the financial statement and federal compliance audits on top of the AICPA standards, requiring additional reporting, among other things. The federal uniform guidance is applicable only to the federal compliance audit, and it's how the single audit requirements are carried out. All of these standards require auditors to maintain independence, integrity, and objectivity in conducting audits. The auditing standards that we just mentioned require auditors to make certain communications to you as the governing body charged with overseeing the county's operations, including its financial reporting and compliance objectives. Our communications with you regarding the audits consist of the reports once they are issued. We email you when we issue the county's audit reports once they're finalized by Fester and Chapman. That email includes links to the reports as well as our report highlights. You should have already received the 2021 audit reports and our report highlights that were issued back in late June. These reports are also available on our website. You and your management team may also access other resources that are available on our website. Such resources include guidance for financial statement and expenditure limitation reporting, user guides for understanding information contained in financial reports and on internal control and compliance. We also have some fraud prevention alerts, budget forms, and frequently asked questions, webinars, and guidance on various topics. So one final thing before I turn it over to Ben. I previously mentioned our report highlights that are linked in the email that we send you when the reports are issued. These highlights contain a snapshot from the year's audit, including links to the reports for the current and prior years. They also give you an idea of the primary revenue sources and how they are spent. They provide a recap of the year's financial or net position and a summary of any audit findings and recommendations. And they also include some of the resources that I just mentioned. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your time, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ben, who will discuss the 2021 audit results with you. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Can you see my presentation slide? Thank you. My name is Ben Her. I'm with Assessor and Chapman, the CPA firm in Scottsdale. We have performed Mojave County's 2021 audit, and this is our outcome for your considerations. Before I start the prepared part of my audit presentation, I would like to express our appreciations to the finance director and finance departments, and also Auditor General's office with their support. Without their help, with their help, we would be able to complete the audit like this. My presentation is two-part. The first part is the audit result summaries with the reports we issued, and then we also include a financial overview from the audited financial statements. As Carla mentioned, we have performed the financial statements from the audit procedures on the county's financial statements, and then we express our opinion on the statements as unmodified, which means finance statements are presented fairly in all material aspects and in accordance with the GAAP. Besides, we did not note any deficiencies on internal controls over financial reporting. Second part of the audit, we issued the single audit report. As you are aware, when non-federal agencies receive more than $750,000 of federal federal fundings, the single audit is required, and then we have selected those 4 programs. Basically, the WIOA cluster is we consider as one program as a major programs, and tested their compliance with required laws and regulations. As noted below, we didn't come across any deficiencies in internal controls over the major program we tested. We didn't report any findings on related to those major programs tested. Third report we are preparing here is a report to the Board of Supervisors. This is as a required communication to those who are in charge of the governance, and it basically provide the overview of what happened during the audit. The first part is if there was any new changes in the existing standards applicable to the county. This year's during 2021, GASB number 84 fiduciary activity has been implemented during the part of the statements, which is a presentation and the criteria on the fiduciary activities has changed, which is included in the county's financial statements. The other 2 important information included usually communicate through this report is whether the auditor has any kind of like difficulties on disagreements with the management. There's none of them was actually reported. Second part of the presentation is the basic financial information included in the financial statements. The first one is this report information came from the county statement of net positions. Basically, it tells that county has reported total asset and default outflow of $517 million and the total liability and default inflows about $185 million, which resulted in county's net position $331 million. Out of that, county's net positions, majority of them is related to the net investment in capital asset, and then there was a restricted from the outside party, $60 million. Next to a slide shows that the statement, the information came from statement of activities regarding the county's overall expenses and the revenues during the 2021 fiscal year. Total revenue of $188 million was reported. That revenue is mostly came from 30% property tax, 25% state share revenue sources, 23% operating grants and contribution, 18% from the charge of services. The final slide is related to the county's expense during the year. Total expense $167 million, and then out of that, 30%, $55 million was spent for the general government functions, and the 32% was spent for the public safeties. That is conclusion of my presentations.
The presenter. Supervisor Johnson, any questions for the presenter?
None, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bishop, any questions for the presenter?
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
Does that complete the presentation? Do we need to take action on this? No?
Chairman Gould, I believe that we had written it up, that the board may accept the reports, but the board doesn't have any choice but to accept the reports when they are issued by the Auditor General's office. So I don't believe that you necessarily have to take action. There did need to be evidence that the audit firm presented to you in order to comply with the statute. So, thank you.
Chairman Gould,
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I would motion to accept the report.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. So we will drop back to the consent agenda. Supervisor Bishop, anything to remove from the consent agenda?
I do not. Nothing to remove.
Supervisor Angus.
13 and 14.
13 and 14. Supervisor Johnson.
18.
18. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Nothing this morning, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing. 13's already moved. What do we got over here? So number 12. And number 25. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, less items 12, 13, 14, 18, and 25.
So moved.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Let's see, item 12. Come on down. Mr. Walsh.
Chairman Gould, members of the board, good morning. Item 12 is ratification of a letter of support. The Flood Control District has applied for congressionally directed spending through Senator Kelly's office to complete a portion of the Grace Neal Channel north of Kingman. We submitted, I believe it was 4 projects, both flood control and public works to be considered. The Grace Neal Channel was identified by Senator Kelly's office as one to be considered and to be moved forward. They requested a letter of support from the board, basically supporting this project to be included in their packet that will be submitted to Congress. Be happy to answer any questions. I don't know if County Manager Elters would like to add anything to that.
County Manager?
Mr. Chairman, board members, just one additional thought. That is, this is a partnership project with the City of Kingman and some private folks. Both the City of Kingman and the privates have sent in a letter of support as well. And it's the third phase of an ongoing project that serves that entire area and provides flood relief to a fairly large area north of Kingman. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Tim, what does phase 3 include specifically? Is it?
Yeah, be happy to. Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter. So the Grace Neal Channel, the overall project, coincides with a future parkway along the Grace Neal alignment that goes from Stockton Hill all the way over to Route 66 and provides great connectivity along the north side of Kingman. The Grace Neal Channel is a flood control project that basically intercepts flooding coming from the north that then goes into the North Kingman area, the Butler locations, and causes quite a bit of flooding. The Grace Neal Channel would alleviate that flooding impact for around 500 homes in that area. We've worked on portions of that channel, working with local developers on acquiring additional right-of-way and putting portions of that channel in. Phase 3 basically goes from about Bank Street over to the Eagle View development. So basically capturing it where that existing concrete channel is coming out of the Eagle View development and then transports it all the way over to Bank Street.
Thank you.
Further questions from the board? Hearing none. Thank you, Director Walsh. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I'll make a motion to approve item 12.
You know what? I have public comment. Tanya Dowson.
Good morning, Tanya Dawson, Mojave County taxpayer. This item appears to be a $1.75 million federally funded through Congress direct spending for flood control. This is federal funding, which is my tax dollars. My tax dollars should not be paying for flood control. I chose not to build in a flood zone so as not to incur the various costs that come with that choice. Those who build in flood zones should be the ones that pay for flood control. So, and if this is a case of if we don't take the money, someone else will, well, that mindset ignores the harm being done to the people that that money was wrongfully taken from. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Supervisor Lingenfelter, you want to restate your motion?
Chairman Gould, I would make a motion to approve item 12.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Number 13. Director Smith.
Good morning, Chairman Gould, members of the board. This item was asked for community services to reapply for the treasury funds for ERAP 2. We brought that back to the board. The board approved that. I just wanted to go through a couple different things for the board as well, some little background information. Currently, before the board had approved for this to take place, as of Friday last week, Mojave County had actually, through DES and through our ERAP 1 fund, $13.8 million was awarded to Mojave County residents. That was 1,505 applications were approved for that funding stream. So I wanted to give that total as well. And I also just wanted to share that over the past 3 months, there's been about 90 applications that we've supported here at Mojave County through the FTE people that the board approved to help with the application process. So I wanted to share that and then just bring you up to speed in regards to this current ERAP 2 program and where it's at. So we received 40, so the Treasury set forth a new plan for ERA 2. Instead of giving all of the money at once, what they've done is they've broken that up into 3 tranches. We received 40% of those funds currently. So the current amendment that's in front of you is to transfer those funds to DES so that they can still administer the program as it stands right now. With that being said, what we're hoping to do, and it's the timing of DES and so forth and so on, is that once we've done this, we'll be able to then, moving forward, reconcile these payments with DES, because obviously DES was currently paying for Mojave County to have these opportunities or for the community to have these opportunities. With that being said, once we get through the reconciling of these different tranches, if the board decides and chooses to, after we spend 70% of this, the total amount was just a little over $5 million. The board will have the opportunity, once we get to the 70%, once we've gone through the process, to have close to a little more than $1 million to put towards affordable rental opportunities. Those have not been determined by the Treasury at this time. How that can be spent, it's pretty broad, but we're hoping to bring that back to the board as long as we go through the process. We meet all the requirements through the Treasury to spend the money and the reallocations, and I'll take any questions.
Questions for Director Smith?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Angus.
So we're back to the ERAP money. Now, the ERAP money was given as a way to help people who are harmed from COVID. So how do the people who are putting in their applications, how are they justifying applying for it? Because as I can see, back in the day, people were losing their jobs, they were not, but that's just not the way it is anymore. So I fear that this is morphing into something that we talked about when we first accepted it as a way that everyone's going to be very comfortable in going to the federal government or for the county government for their living expenses. And I believe there was a lot of fraud in it. I do. So I don't even see the necessity in it, because again, if you go into affordable housing, then again, you're picking and choosing. This one, just to go back to the speaker, some of these things we know they have, this one makes me incredibly uncomfortable. So I can't support it anymore.
Further questions from the board? Hearing none. Tanya Dowson?
Supervisor Gould, if I could.
Sure.
So I did want to mention too that I will follow up on this because if the board does not approve this action, because we took the funds, there will be a reallocation process. And so if we're going to give the funds back, we'll have to go through that process as well. So that'll be something brought back to the board, because we did have that where we actually accept. The board advised us to apply to Treasury to accept the funds. I don't have the board memo, the board action, but that was a board action that we took to apply for these funds. So just so the board's aware, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Supervisor Angus.
So this action is asking us to extend it to so how much money is left?
So ERA 2 came to the board, and you asked us to
Right.
go to Treasury and apply for the funds. We did that. So currently, there's $5 million because it's the full award that was given to us. We took, per the Treasury guidelines of the way they set up the program, they sent us 40%. So currently, two things could happen. We could take the funds right now, provide those to DES, and not apply for any funding in the future. Or there's a reallocation process, and I just want to make sure that the board was aware of that, and I'll have to bring that back to the board. That's all I was trying to make sure the board had the full information.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager.
Board members and Supervisor Angus, just to refresh your memory, ERAP 1, Emergency Rental Assistance Program 1, that's what ERAP stands for, was about $6.5 million. Mojave County accepted it. We had an agreement, IGA, with the Department of Economic Security at the state level to administer it for us. We retained just enough money to help individuals who did not know how to apply. That was expanded over a period of time, and ERAP 2 came through. We, Mojave County, through the board action, declined ERAP 2. However, the state recognized a need in Mojave County and continued to assist individuals beyond the $6+ million that was allocated to Mojave County. We are currently at over $13 million, as you heard from Director Smith. So it's really unclear to us at this point if DES in the reconciling process that he's describing is going to use this money from ERAP 2 to replenish or to reimburse the state for the money that they've already incurred beyond what Mojave County awarded in ERAP 1. So it is, we continue, this is truly an extension of the program. We're not changing anything in it, and I'm not really trying to convince you, the board, to do one thing or another. I'm just explaining to you what we're doing now and what we have done. What we're doing is extending the program for those that need it. It's the state DES department that is administering it, validates received applications, checks on their eligibility, and so on. So the board had approved us seeking ERAP 2, even after we declined it. We sought it out. The Treasury reopened the portal for us to complete it. And now we're receiving the first of 3 payments, as you heard from Director Smith. So this is where we're at. And there appears to be a need if indeed applications continue to come in and get approved.
Chairman Gould?
Hang on a second. So this actually might be a good opportunity to test the theory of with shekels come shackles. So we refused the money, then the state did it anyway, and then we changed our mind. And so now we want to give this money back to the state to pay them back for something we didn't want them to do in the first place. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, if you say so, we started the program, the state administered it for us. The entire dollar amount that was allocated to Mojave County in ERAP 1 was distributed. There continued to be a need. We were not asked. They just continued to assist people in Mojave County. I can't say if they did something similar in other counties, but when our Board of Supervisors declined ERAP 2, the state continued to help those people that needed help, that met the requirement. Then we revisited ERAP 2 with the board. We got approval to pursue it. We did pursue it. We were told it would come in 3 payments. and this is the first one, and we're here to just say we have an IGA with the state to truly continue to do what they have been doing on our behalf. We're only retaining enough funds to fund individuals to help people complete applications that need assistance with any computer-related services and such. So,
Supervisor Angus?
When we accepted it again, there was still like the last remnants of the whole COVID experience. But I don't understand, this was meant for COVID-related, legitimate COVID-related problems. But I'd like to see these applications. I want to see who is still saying that they can't get a job because of COVID, they can't pay their rent because of COVID. So this is morphed into something other than COVID. So let's just be honest about it. This is just sort of a state welfare program, basically. And I think that's very dangerous. We can make the argument that all welfare, but we've watched this one. That's the interesting thing. We've watched the way the state is manipulated. And I remember saying that we were going to bring it back, and I voted for it. I remember all that, but circumstances were different. And it's just more than we ever talked about, and I'm just uncomfortable with the whole thing.
So the last thing that I wanted to share with you, and again, just for the record, when ERAP 2 was reconsidered, it was reconsidered with the understanding that if up to 60% of it is needed and utilized, at that point, the Treasury or the federal government may provide some guidance as to how up to 25% can be used toward affordable housing. And the board accepted ERAP 2 with that understanding. So we're not there yet. And there's, again, our thinking is there would be an opportunity to put some of those funds toward affordable housing in Mojave County.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Director Smith, I just have a couple of questions. First, tell me about this reconciliation process. And it sounds like there's some uncertainty there. Explain that to us.
So the reconciliation process, the reallocation process, if the funds aren't spent by a certain time period, what happens is that the federal government will reconcile. So they'll take back the reallocation. They'll take the funds back if they're not being spent. So that's all the cases for that, Chairman.
And is it crystal clear how that whole process is going to work? It sounded to me as though maybe there was some uncertainty.
No, there's no uncertainty. I just don't have all the details in front of me, but I could come back to the board and provide those details.
Okay, and if the deadline or this program is not extended another year, what happens? If the deadline here is not extended to December 31st or 2023, what happens?
Well, a couple things. I mean, so DES is still going to continue running the program. If we don't extend it, right, we won't have people in my office actually anymore helping with applications. So if you go back and just look at the numbers, it's almost 90 people a month through Mojave County that won't be receiving services as of September 30th, because this program will not be extended. So as of September 30th, anyone who comes to the county that needs support for this, they won't have somebody in the county to actually provide that service. That's one thing. In regards to the funding, I mean, the funding is going to be there either way. It's just a matter of how we get from point A to point B.
Sure, I appreciate that. In previous discussions that we've had and in previous testimony, the vetting process on the applications, I wasn't real impressed with it. It was like you just sort of took people at their word, they're having a hardship, and you don't check on it. And my personal feeling is, having a lot of small business owner friends, that if you extend a program like this, it's just a continued disincentive to work. They're already having a difficulty finding employees. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So I don't think I'm going to be supporting this either. Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson, any comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Smith, if we turn down if we turn this down, the only thing we're doing is doing away with the help here at the county.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Johnson, could you please repeat that?
If we turn this down, the only thing that changes is that we will no longer have the help at the county. It'll still be there at the state, so the people won't be able to get assistance at the county level. So that's the only part that goes away.
Correct. Chairman Gould, Supervisor Johnson.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager.
Supervisor Johnson, that and the potential, again, just to answer the question, that what Director Smith just provided you, as well as this opportunity down the road to put any funds toward affordable housing in Mojave County by declining it and pulling back. The state will do what the state determines is warranted and needed, I trust. But we would, I don't believe we would have a say into any funding going toward affordable housing. I just wanted to answer the question.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman. Michael, if this item is not approved, it's my understanding that the program will run through and stop December 31st, 2022, right? So you'd still have a few months left under the program if this does not get passed. Everybody knows that it goes away December 31st, 2022, right? If this does not pass.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, if it doesn't pass, it's September 30th. So if it said December, the funding that we have currently goes through the Emergency Rental Assistance Program 1. We have funding for staff. This is the first amendment that came to the board. We have funds there to support that through September 30th. That's when ERA 1 ends. They're doing them conjointly, so ERA 1 and ERA 2 are together currently right now, so they can, if one's expended the funds, they could then do that as well. But for us as Mojave County, for our staff, that funding ends September 30th.
I'm confused though, because your motion or your item says extending the end date from December 31st, 2022 to December 31st, 2023. So there's nothing in here about September.
So that was correct in here, but we also asked for staff to be in the amendment itself. We asked for staff to hold back $215,000 that would have been for staff to continue on through that process. But ERA 1, which the board approved, and those are the only funds that we can spend in Mojave because that's what the board approved, ends September 30th. This ERA 1 ends September 30th. So there's no way we can expend funds or use funds because we don't have any more funds. They end on September 30th.
Got it, I appreciate it. And as far as affordable housing is concerned, I know the state has the LIHTC programs. Is it, there's the 9% program, and then is it a 4%?
Yes.
And, you know, if the county wants to play a role in affordable housing, I think we really need to start seeing what we can do to bolster the private sector on the LIHTC as far as helping them complete applications and do that in the private sector, because the state has those programs, and I'd like to see more of those projects here from the private sector side.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, just so that you're aware, there were 2 LIHTC projects actually passed for Mojave County. There was one in Bullhead, and there was also one in the tribe. So there have been 2 LIHTCs actually currently developed in Mojave County, and it's been quite some time since those have actually been in Mojave County. Just to be aware, there's several different programs when we talk LIHTC. So you have the federal government LIHTC program, the 9 and the 4%. The state of Arizona, as of last year, also started another program of 9 and 4%. Those 2 programs combined have really helped developers, from the conversations that I've had, have really helped the affordability and the make projects pencil out. And there's also more funding that's coming from the state of Arizona as well to help with those programs.
Great. Point in case we can do away with these funds. Thank you.
Excellent.
Supervisor Bishop, any comments or questions?
No.
Supervisor Angus?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Supervisor Lingenfelter, for that clarification. You know, when we did vote to take it back, that was a consideration about the low-cost housing. But since then, you know, there are so many programs at the state and at the federal level for that low-cost housing. And again, this is just another one that we get to sort of pick and choose winners and losers. It's just, the whole thing has, again, morphed into something it was never supposed to be. It was supposed to be temporary help for people who were harmed with COVID, who lost their jobs, who couldn't pay their rent or utilities, and now it's one big bloated program. So that's what I feel about it.
Let me take some public comment. Tanya Dowson.
Good morning, Tanya Dowson, Mojave County taxpayer. Biden never lets a good crisis go to waste. This is another example. This appears to be an American Rescue Plan agenda item, or should I say America's Racist Plan item, to support 2 full-time clerical positions for a rental assistance program. Over the decades, Americans have been groomed to accept wealth redistribution. They've been conditioned to believe that they're obligated to help others, but they weren't reminded to consider the people whose rights they were taking away. The United States Treasury fact sheet titled How Treasury's Implementation of American Rescue Plan Programs Prioritizes Equity. I don't know if this is going to be on the screen. States that rental assistance is one of the Treasury Department's key actions, with 80% of the assistance reaching very low income households, 40% reaching Black households, and 20% reaching Hispanic households. There's nothing racist about that. The Treasury's fact sheet also states that the Treasury has been guided to meet the needs of marginalized individuals and provide capital to historically underserved communities. Our country has a legal system where people who have been wronged can go to seek justice. It may not be a perfect system, but it's a heck of a lot better than the government forcing innocent people to give up their hard-earned money for random people who didn't earn it. There's no justice in our government forcefully taking our money and recklessly giving it to people who didn't earn it. Providing capital to historically underserved communities sounds like reparations, maybe because it is. The American Rescue Plan advances the Biden administration's racist and clearly Marxist agenda for the Democrats. Are you going to vote for America First, or are you going to help advance the Democrats' Marxist agenda? And in case you're wondering if the Biden's American Rescue Plan advances United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development goals, ARPA is listed in the Center for Sustainable Development's document titled 1 Year In under the United States Domestic Sustainable Development Policy. Biden is definitely not America First. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Make a motion that we deny the adoption of BOS Resolution 2022-143.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay. Nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item 14. Director Smith, you're back.
I asked for this to be taken off, Chairman Gould. So it looks like this has been increased by $2 million as well. So tell me a little about this one.
Chairman Gould, members of the board, this is Arizona at Work. I've been here in front of you several times to speak about this program. These funds are just the regular allocated funding that we receive from the state. It's workforce development. It's actually, when you look at the funds and the amendment that's been passed, we were receiving a little less than we received last year, so it's really not increasing it that much. Actually, it's a decrease.
Questions from the board? Let me take some public comment. Tanya Dowson.
Good morning, Tanya Dowson, Mojave County taxpayer. Grant recipients must follow the terms and conditions of the grant. One of the conditions of this grant is Biden's executive order advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. It directs the whole of the federal government to advance an ambitious equity and racial justice agenda. I don't know if this can be, do I need to turn it?
Turn it 90.
Oh, they got it. They got it. Awesome. So, in response, over 90 government agencies produced their equity action plans. The Department of Energy describes the equity action plans as a total transformation of government. Biden's executive order requires that grant award recipients advance equity for all. Notice they're not saying equal protection under the law. They mean equity as in preferential treatment for some special interest groups. The grant recipients must advance equity for people of color and others who have been historically underserved and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. Are those who are considered historically underserved and faced with persistent poverty and inequality becoming the new protected class? They say government programs are designed to serve all eligible individuals. Well, this is wrong. Our government was designed to serve all individuals equally. We are all equal under the law. Special treatment for some over others is abuse. Grant recipients are advised to make the taxpayers' wealth they redistribute widely available, serving a diverse population. Intentionally trying to serve a diverse population requires quotas and discrimination. There's no way around that. The term equity is defined as just or fair and impartial treatment of all individuals, including individuals who belong to underserved communities such as Black, Latino, Indigenous, and Native American persons, Asian persons, Pacific Islanders, and other persons of color, members of religious minorities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, LGBTQ+ persons, persons with disabilities, persons who live in rural areas, persons otherwise adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. The list includes just about everyone but straight white males that live in the suburbs or cities. I can see how this racist extremist material gets into our federal government under the Biden administration, but how has it been allowed to get into our board packet? If any of the underserved on Biden's list have been legitimately harmed, our country has a legal system where they can go to seek justice. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager.
I'm sorry, do you have any additional public speakers?
I do. Okay.
I'll wait.
I had a question for Director Smith, though. Director Smith, do we have racial quotas in this program?
Chairman Gould, members of the board, we serve the community as they come through the door. There's no quote, we need this many from this group, this many from that group. The people that we serve through the community are the people that walk through our doors. We serve all of Mojave County, no matter where that may be. We go up to Colorado City. Everywhere within the county, we provide services as equitable as we can, meaning that we serve the whole county.
Thank you, sir. Chris Rodarty.
Chris Rodarty, Mojave County taxpayer. I oppose item 14. Following is an excerpt of the 46-page contract Mojave County will be signing. Listen closely to the requirements for which the county will be held responsible. And I quote, promoting equitable delivery of government benefits and equal opportunity. The Department of Labor seeks to affirmatively advance equity, civil rights, and equal opportunity in the policies, programs, and services it provides. Therefore, consistent with Executive Executive Order 13985, Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities through the federal government, grant and cooperative award recipients, that's us, must execute the terms and conditions of their award in a manner that advances equity for all, including people of color and others who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. Government programs are designed to serve all eligible individuals. As an expectation, labor's award recipients should make the goods and services they provide widely available with the goal of effectively serving a diverse population of eligible individuals, fairly, justly, and impartially in administering the grant award. Award recipients are encouraged to engage in contracting and subcontracting for goods and services related to performing the terms and conditions of their grants in such a way to achieve equity. I'm still quoting from the contract. The term equity means the consistent and systematic, fair, just, and impartial treatment of all individuals, including individuals who belong to underserved communities that have been denied such treatment, such as Black, Latino, Indigenous, and Native American persons, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and other persons of color, members of religious minorities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, LGBTQ+ persons, persons with disabilities, persons who live in rural areas, and persons otherwise adversely affected by persistent poverty or inequality. There is so much to unpack here. How did America become such a segmented society of entitled groups to which reparations are due? Who decides how and when Mojave County has complied and satisfactorily met the Fed's equity standards? By what measurement is compliance with equity determined? How much freedom will be sacrificed for a few pieces of silver? Once again, I'm asking this board to refrain from selling us out and vote no on 14. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. County Manager, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out, it's my understanding that this program transcends administrations. It has been here in the past and continues through different administrations. There is a workforce board here in Mojave County and represents both Mojave and La Paz that oversees these as well. Mojave County, as you heard from Director Smith, administers this program to those that come in and apply for it and need it, regardless of looks and shapes. And last but not least, in the current workforce environment and vacancies that we have in Mojave County, and as far as employment, this would be a positive thing. And it would just continues what we have benefited from in the past. Just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments from the board? Supervisor Johnson, you have questions or comments?
None, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bishop, questions or comments?
No questions or comments, but I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. You haven't. So ordered. Item 18. Let's see.
That was mine, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pulled this off. We only had one person apply. The person has really no experience. We've asked no financial statement from them that I can see. And I think the direction the county is going in, maybe we need to put what we want to do with that fairground out then before we start giving away land to somebody with no financial support coming back to the county. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gold,
Supervisor Bishop.
I'll make a motion that we do not approve this award.
Your motion was to not approve.
That's right, do not approve. The motion is do not approve.
Chairman Gold, and I believe I heard Supervisor Johnson second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Not sure if it's Parks or who would answer this question. I'll direct it to you, Sam, if I could. But if this is not approved, what happens to that facility?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Lingenfelter, if I heard the motion correctly, or the discussion, is to wait until the board considers or makes decisions on the fairgrounds. So we could either bring it back to the board at some future or not bring it back, or but if the board denies it, then it's denied until further notice.
Follow-up question on that. When is the term of the current contract? When does the term expire right now?
My understanding, and I see Tara walking up to the podium, because we resumed operation of the fairground in January, the contract, there was a contract with the Fairground Association, but we currently do not have any contract to operate the BMX. That is the reason staff went out to have a contract to provide these functions.
Okay, so the Fairgrounds Association had a contract with the BMX folks. Did you say that we did not honor that contract, that we're not honoring that contract?
We did not honor that contract. We went out and procured for it. We did complete procurement process. Tara, I'm going to let you answer that part.
Thank you, Chairman and Supervisor Lingenfelter. We don't have a contract. I don't actually think that the Fairgrounds Association had a contract. I think at one point they had a BMX operation there, and I think it was done voluntarily. So there was no contract for us to take over. We went through this solicitation process in order to get someone in place. It's at no cost to the county, no revenue generation for the county. It's just to have that event happen there. And to respond to some of the other comments that were made, just so the board is aware, we did only receive one response, and that particular respondent is working with the operator that runs the BMX facility in Bullhead City. So although they don't have direct experience, they are working alongside the one that's running the one in Bullhead City.
And Supervisor Lingenfelter, Kristen is here with Park Service also, if you have any additional questions.
I do. Is anyone using the facility right now? Kristen?
They were, so they were filling out special event permits, and so we can go through that process with them, but honestly, it's really time consuming with weekly practices and then stuff happening on Saturdays as well.
Yeah, if this isn't approved, see, my concern where I'm trying to go with this is I don't want to impede or hurt the residents and the children that are using this facility right now, while the county figures out what the heck we're going to do. So what needs to happen so that the kids can continue to use that facility? Because right now in Kingman, I mean, since I was a kid, we've had a movie theater and a bowling alley. And unless your family has a little bit of money to buy a side-by-side or something like that, you can go hiking and things like that. But these are low-cost things that kids can do, and I want to protect those things.
So if approved, there is a 30-day clause in that contract. So if the board elects to change what we're doing with the fairgrounds, we can cancel it at that time and only give a 30-day notice to the renter. I don't know what you're going to call her.
Sure.
The operator. But again, she's been working very closely with Turnell, and we're looking at as a partnership between the two. So having that, like that travel BMX experience. So like the Bullhead track can compete against the Lake Havasu track and the Kingman track as well.
Got it. If this item is denied, are they going to still be able to hold events at that facility? What's going to happen?
Yeah, they would have to go through that special event permitting process again.
How quick is it to turn one of those around?
I can get them turned around pretty quickly. It's just done internally through Parks Department.
Yeah. Well, I think that we could, my own thoughts are that we would approve this until we figure out what the heck we're going to do with the larger fairgrounds, if anything. I mean, it's no skin off our nose, right? We're not paying anything. It's just, it's at no cost to the county, correct? So
And they do help.
I don't see any harm in that. So
They do help maintain the track too.
And they do help maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably not going to support the denial, but I appreciate the information. Thanks.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Angus.
I hope that when we heard that the Bullhead, the people who run the Bullhead, including Turnell Henry, who has done such a spectacular job in Bullhead City. In fact, as a little aside, that track produced a young woman, 12 years old, who made it to the world final BMX last week in France. And the whole community rallied around her. That BMX track is now a central part of our community. I knew nothing about it, but now I'm a huge supporter, and hearing all the things that we heard about it's no money from the county, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't. When Supervisor Johnson said that they have no experience, I had a little concern too, but now that I know that they are part of the Bullhead that has run such a great, and with so many kids who doing it. But I want to say to Supervisor Lingenfelter, you say low cost. Do you know how much those bikes cost? They are tremendous, but the kids love them, and we see families out there every Friday night. So I'm going to support this.
We have a motion on the Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. We have these speakers come up and address the board all the time, and we just turn down some money. But here we are talking about giving away county land to a private business for no money back to the county, and that really concerns me, especially with the fact, like I said, we don't know which way we're going with that fairgrounds. So that's why I'm adamantly opposed to this. And that, I guess, to add on to, I have no idea what the financial backing of this person is, if they could even continue to do what they say they'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The nays appear to have it. The motion fails.
Supervisor Gould, I make a motion that we approve item 14, which is at 18.
I'll second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it so ordered. Item 25. It's Public Works.
Mr. Chairman. Never mind, sorry.
Mr. Fromm, would you care to speak?
Sure. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. This project is actually corollary to the solar projects that were, or rather the rezoning that was approved in February and May of this year. Solar renewable resources need to be connected to the grid. I distinctly recall that at our last hearing in May, the board suggested that we consider, given that the local load-serving utility Unisource had just come out with a request for proposals, the board suggested that we consider making some of our parcels that had now been freshly rezoned available for the purpose of providing energy to the county by way of the request for proposals. Together with partners, we have done so. The new resource need to be connected to the grid. The local grid for the utility is actually what's called a sub-transmission grid at 69,000 volts. That's not a uniform grid. Different segments have different capacities or wire strength, and therefore whenever you connect a project to a grid at what's called a point of interconnection, that will trigger studies on the part of the utility to figure out what part of their system needs to be upgraded in order to accommodate additional energy being connected to the grid at that location. In this particular Griffith area, there are significant differences in the segments. These came up in earlier interconnection studies back in 2009, 2011, and 15. And as a result, one alternative is to create what's called a generation tie line, which is a dedicated separate power line paid for by the proponent of a project to, on their dime, pay for and build a power line to link the power to the point where the utility wants to have it. And the request for the license merely tries to establish the technical or real-life feasibility of using existing roadway easements in order to be able to connect the power, the new power, to the grid at locations that are of interest to the utility. So we're just, as you will be aware, there's a publicly announced very tight timeline for the utility to make awards. So it's a very fast moving process with awards due by the end of the year. And therefore, in order to be able to make these solar farms relevant for the utility and this process, we initiated the process to physically be able to have an ability to link our solar output to the grid at locations under discussion.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Fromm?
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
Maybe the gentleman can explain, maybe I misunderstood, but with all the discussions we've had, I thought all this power was being kept for use on the land.
That is correct. That with the initial, Unisource has never gone into the market requesting for proposals. Going back to when they acquired the business from Citizens. And therefore, when we initiated our process for the rezoning, the intent was for the solar farms to be able to connect off-grid to a location, to be the power plant, if you will, to energize a plant in the actual heavy industrial zone next or near to the Griffith power plant. So that's what we started out to be, because that was the only item on the table. And then subsequently in April, the utility came out with a request for proposals. We had various discussions, I think even in this forum, as late as May the 2nd, I believe. And we were asked at that hearing whether we might want to consider applying within, or in fact the question was, will we be applying into that RFP? And the answer at the time was yes, we would be, from a practical point of view. And here we are. And in any
Mr. Chair,
event,
so we rezoned that for a local facility, and now it's going to just be a merchant plant?
not be a merchant plant, it would be under contract with the utility as and when the utility makes the awards in favor of solar farms located on these sites that were rezoned relative to selecting another site. We don't know. And
Thank
therefore,
you,
sure.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fromm, to follow up on Supervisor Johnson's comments, you had testified before that all of the power was going to be used by industry in the I-40 industrial corridor, that you had already had commitments from those industries to use 100% of that power. So my question is, as a part of this Unisource RFP, I don't know how many megawatts of power they're going out for. Let's say you win one of those. What happens to the previous obligations that you have with those private sector companies for that power?
We would like to proceed.
Is it going to leave them short?
No, in fact, we'd like to proceed as per our Plan A. The Plan B just emerged in April. And as you may recall, we initiated the rezoning request back in December of last year. And therefore, we didn't even know this would come up. It has come up. We also have to be practical and pragmatic. And what is a fact is that the area in the Griffith area is lacking in power, which has caused several industrial applicants or wannabe residents not to be able to commit. And therefore, we hope that we would resolve that as well, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and we would be in the same boat, and we think we can help resolve our own power need, but also that of others that would be buying power from the grid.
Thank you. I guess my confusion came, if you had some previous commitments locked down with private industry for 100% of that power, why would you even be interested in going for a power purchase agreement with Unisource that would take a portion of that power away from your previous commitments? That's kind of where my confusion was.
Our project for the original Plan A, if you will, is scalable. It comes in, let's call it blocks, and a certain amount of energy can facilitate or energize a portion of the power load demand. In fact, we would have our own. It was not third-party buyers. It was a captive party that would need the power for to produce an output that's of interest in a different market, a non-power market, and therefore it's really our commitment from our left pocket or right pocket to our left pocket in Plan A. And if it turns out that we end up with a portion of the award for the Unisource project, then we will be forced to scale down our ability of our Plan A. Because it's all limited by how much power can we produce.
I understand. Thank you for your answers.
Supervisor Bishop, any questions, comments?
I just have a comment. I did have a discussion with Mr. Fromm, and I suggested that he consider the RFP that Unisource put out to kind of make him part of the community and help the area that he's coming to with his solar farm. So I don't know if my encouragement helped him make that decision, but I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Let me take some public comment. Kenny Works.
Kenny Works, Yucca, Arizona. I'm opposed to anything that's going to block off square miles of property in Mojave County. Here's a picture of a similar plant in Kern County, near Mojave, California, not too far from us. There's no flora, no fauna, no critters. Doesn't need any water. That's why it should be in Maricopa County or Queen Creek or both. They're the ones who need that extra population, extra power to promote their population growth in those areas. Biden's plan to promote green energy will end in tears, expert warns. I'm quoting the Epoch Times. The lessons for America from Germany, which stepped into the forefront of the green energy movement 22 years ago by adopting its energy wind. America founding father Benjamin Franklin once said that experience is an expensive school, but fools will learn in no other. Germany's green energy policy, launched in the year 2000, could have been a cheap lesson for the United States today. The Biden administration has chosen to follow Germany, providing heavy subsidies for wind and solar and suppressing industries that could reliably meet America's energy needs and even reduce its carbon footprint. But like most grand government adventures into industrial policy, the push for renewables is already revealing itself to be enormously wasteful and counterproductive. The whole idea that you would take something as complicated as the electric system, one of the most complicated things people have invented to date, and choose to put it on that system and how to run it by popularity contest, to me, that's nuts, and it's going to end in tears. Peter Hartley, professor of energy economics at Rice University, told the Epoch Times, trying to run that system with politics is not a very smart thing to do. While Germany appears to have closed the door on nuclear energy, the European Union is reportedly drawing up plans to reclassify natural gas and nuclear energy as green. Germany's energy wind has succeeded in reducing its national carbon footprint substantially, but it only measures emissions within its own borders. Had it measured its actual global footprint, it would have discovered that the batteries, solar panels, and EVs that it was importing were increasing CO2 emissions substantially. People think, thank you.
Thank you, sir. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gold.
Supervisor Bishop.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Let's take a 5-minute break before we go into the public hearings.
Thank you.
She's finished one call and she'll bring it down.
I just going to talk real loud. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. We're on agenda item 39. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to testify on item 39? Brandon Lavril.
Well, Chairman, Supervisors, thank you for your time. My name is Brandon Lurwill. I'm a property owner in Mojave County. I am greatly opposed to the Riverside RV Park, agenda item 39. I'd like to address the special use permit that's up for discussion and the public health and safety and welfare of Mojave County. First item on my concern is the sewer. It is feet from the Virgin River on their current plan. One of Mojave County's precious resources of water, which we've discussed heavily today. In 2003, there was a fecal bacterial study showing high levels of that river and nitrate contamination. I think this could potentially add to that through groundwater and surface water. The native materials are fast absorbent sediment, so your gray water and sewers go through the soils very quickly. The next item I have is wildlife river ecosystem. Of course, we have the fish, the birds of prey like hawks, eagles, blue heron, and the Arizona state bird, the roadrunner. Mammals, rabbits, coyotes, and squirrels frequent the area, as do reptiles such as lizards and the famed desert tortoise. This is a very delicate riparian habitat in this area. Utilities, power. Let's talk about power. We've just had some major discussions about power shortages. This is going to be over 210 50 amp services in a high density development. On their application, I found several errors. They list this as Overton Power District to supply the power. It is actually Dixie Power that services this area. It tells me the owners don't frequent their own property. They view it from afar. They list Beaver Dam Water. I'm not sure if this is correct or incorrect, but as being a neighbor, we are serviced by Dixie Springs Water, or Desert Springs Water, excuse me. And they're almost at capacity and having problems with arsenic currently. The next thing on the application, I found erroneous. They list the property as vacant. They currently have 4 rental properties. Sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Jerry Eves, is it necessary? Care to speak, sir?
Yes, please.
Chairman, Supervisors, appreciate the comments that have been made today and by the items brought forth by the comments. We are aware of the Dixie Power servicing that area and have been in talks with them, and they have the capacity to handle the property. The two things that we like to emphasize on this is our development, property ownership is 80 acres, and the development takes place on the highest part of the lower piece, which leaves over half the property open to the native vegetation and animal life to impact that. An RV park is going to impact the area. There's no doubt about it. Been in touch with the water company, and they have the capacity for our project. They are having some issues with arsenic that they can take care of being it treated. Our wastewater is a self-contained mechanical system. It is not a septic tank, so that it's treated and materialized as far as and actualized so that it comes out, and we will be using that reuse water to irrigate our landscape, desert landscaping on the area. Appreciate your time. If I can be available for any other questions, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Anyone else here to testify on item 39? Come forward, ma'am. I get you to state your name and address.
Yep, I sure can. My name is Jamie Lurwell. I am the wife of Brandon Lurwell I have property in Mojave County as well. To kind of follow up on his speech that he was talking with you guys with. Let me see where he ended. Sorry. The properties are not vacant. There's 4 rentals. Many of the letters for approval for this are from the Larson family themselves. They're the property owners. A high-density commercial and residential zoned area, spot zoning is at its finest. Retention, detention, stormwater ponds. There is absolutely nothing on the plans for this. The area was flooded, as you know, just the last couple of days. If there were 210, sorry, I'm not a good speaker, 210 units or trailers, they probably, some of them could have been into the Virgin River as we speak. There is one road in and out. If this would have been an emergency evacuation situation, there could have been some possibilities of hang up on the road, which would cause possibly people losing their lives because of this. There's multiple people trying to leave this area at one time. There's very poor egress, like I just spoke. Fire prevention, protection. I don't see anything there on the plans. The plans are very vague to approve a special use permit of this magnitude. Dark sky, light pollution. Does Mojave County have a dark sky ordinance currently? If not, we're looking for commissioners' help with this. I would like the commission to table the application for further review based on health, safety, and welfare of Mojave County. I request the commission to order a study for environmental impact, wildlife impact, traffic study, because there's schools that will be affected with the added traffic to this road, Native American and archaeological study, and again, the riparian study as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else care to testify on item 39? It is a public hearing.
Chairman Gould, just as an FYI to the board, this morning I did receive at 9 a.m. It looks like 22 letters of opposition that they received over the weekend. I did email them to you guys, but it would have been a little late for you to see them. So they are in your emails.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
If I might ask the developer to come to the podium, please. With regard to public health and safety, is your proposed development within the fire district currently, or is it not? Is it outside of the boundaries of the fire district?
It's in the fire district, and we have communicated with the fire district about, we are installing a at minimum 100,000 gallon water storage tank up on the hill where they currently have 80,000, to supplement that and increasing the line size from that down into the property, so we have fire flow down into the property, which in that area is 1,000 gallon a minute for 30 minutes. Ours would be in excess of that. Also, with regards to ingress egress on the property, right now there's about 1.9 miles of dirt road, 1.7, that right now the county does not have a dedicated road. It's accessed through easement and maintained by an agreement put in place a few years ago by the county and the property owners collectively to maintain it if they brought it up to the current county standards. Our plan and proposal is to asphalt that road down into the project with the county's cooperation as far as to the county codes to eliminate the washing out or flood waters that may continually to hit the area, and also during the summer times and times it is not raining, to cut down on any of the dust that's collected. As far as the night sky lighting, I brought that up in our application that we will be using a night sky ordinance that we helped prepare and propose and was accepted by the town of Tocqueville City, the town of Apple Valley, and other communities in southern Utah to preserve the night sky. Any other questions, Supervisor?
Thank you for that. I have one additional question. Can you tell me a little bit more about the self-contained mechanical wastewater system?
Right now there's, to my knowledge, and there may be more, 3 different brands of mechanical wastewater. So it would use the sewage system, contain it within your, in this case, fiberglass tanks. There will be a media there that would allow the bacteria to break down the solids, and the wastewater of that would be, and it's used a lot in Arizona, at least southern Arizona on golf courses, as a reuse water. They just tell you not to lick the golf ball when you're picking it up, but it's used as a situation where it can have human contact.
So it's going to be treated to, are you familiar with the A, B, C?
Yes.
What is your wastewater going to be treated to before it's put on?
It will be it would be between an A, B. It was with the mechanical plant is what the DEQ has specified. So it, the E. coli, everything, the only thing we don't do is the ultraviolet treatment, which would make it human consumption use.
Okay, thank you.
Again, we will be following the guidelines of the Arizona DEQ and the approved systems with that, and have the engineers and contractors that are licensed to install that system.
Appreciate it. That's all the questions I have. I have one question for Tim, if he's, come on down. Tim, I know that up in the Beaver Dam area, we've had at least 2 very significant flooding events, one in 2005, one in 2010. I remember those vividly. Can you tell me a little bit, I know that the zoning always comes before a specific site planning process, and so you may not be able to speak to the mitigations that would be required for such a development to make sure that should there be another flooding event someday in the future, which we don't know, we don't want anybody's property to be falling into the river, and we don't want the septic or the sanitary system to be swept up either. So how close are they to the Virgin River, and just the possibility of a significant flooding event? I want to make sure that we don't approve something that is going to be set up to fall into the river.
Definitely. Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, this property actually, part of the property does encompass the Virgin River along the east boundary. So it is close to it. This portion, this approval right here would be for the special use permit, which would allow for the use on the property. If approved today, we would work with the applicant. They would submit a site plan. We would work with them on that process in approving in reviewing and approving the RV park plan. During that process, we would work with them on the flood zones, where those flood zones are, where they could build, where they couldn't build, what protections they would need to take in those different locations. Curious enough with certain flood zones, with an RV, actually an RV, I don't want to go off the rails here, but an RV is a somewhat suitable because it is on wheels and you're able to get it out of there in case of an emergency. So in some flood zones, it's actually preferable to, if you're going to develop it, to have, an RV that is ready to be able to be taken out of that area. But definitely within the floodways, there would be no construction, and we would work with them to ensure the adequate protections were provided to prevent any loss during a flooding event. As I mentioned, it does have a portion of the Virgin River on the property. One of the main areas that we've seen damage in the Beaver Dam area is the Beaver Dam wash down. That's actually a little bit south of here, so that wouldn't be affected. This property wouldn't be affected by the floods that we've seen coming down that wash area.
They would not?
It wouldn't. It's away from that.
Okay. And the clerk mentioned that they had received another 20 or 22 letters of opposition. Have you had a chance to review those at all?
Yes, we actually were working furiously this morning to try and determine location and all of that to see if it would kick in the 3/4 vote. We received, so a total, prior to this weekend, we had about 5 letters of opposition and 10 in support. Over the weekend, we received 22 letters, which we just reviewed, and it does not impose the 3/4 vote. So those 22 letters of opposition, the location of the people writing the letters were not immediately in proximity of enough of them weren't in immediate proximity to the parcel. So in order to kick in the 3/4 vote, you need 20% of property owners and 20% of acreage to enact the 3/4 vote. These ones didn't get to the 20%. So there were some that were within that proximity, but a majority were without. So.
Thank you.
That's a 300-foot proximity?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Walsh, in the backup, I only noticed one letter of opposition. Did anybody show up at the planning and zoning hearing?
I don't believe so, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Father, we seem to be having people skipping the planning and zoning process. This isn't the only one, and then showing up at our board meetings at the last minute trying to kill projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Bishop, any questions, comments?
No comment.
Taking that as a no.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Chairman Gould, just to give the item a chance, I'm going to make a motion to approve the adoption of BOS resolution number 2022-136.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes, my vote was a no.
And Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
And I'm going to vote no.
So it does not carry.
So motion does not carry.
Well,
Actually, I'm going to vote yes. What was the motion? Now I'm confused.
the motion was to approve the item.
So I'm going to vote no on that then. So the motion failed.
Yeah, that would make it three no's, 3-2.
Right, so the motion
You a
to
yes or no?
approve fails.
Okay.
Excuse me, who made the motion?
Supervisor Lingenfelter made the motion.
And I did. It was seconded by,
By Supervisor Angus.
and we had Supervisor Bishop that voted aye.
Sir, if I may, Chairman, since this is my district, I went ahead and made a motion just to entertain the item to pass or fail. Personally, I did not support that. So now it failed 3-2. It's open again if somebody wants to make another motion.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
I thought that this just took a majority vote because there wasn't enough opposition.
Chairman.
I believe we had 3 no's and 2 yays.
Chairman Gold, also Supervisor Johnson, I did forward the email from Development Services a few minutes ago verifying that you did not need the 20% or majority vote that you're referring to.
Oh, okay, so I guess where I got confused was Supervisor Angus seconded but voted against it.
No, I voted for it, but
Chairman Gould.
Lingenfelter voted no.
Okay.
And I voted with Supervisor Lingenfelter.
And I believe Supervisor Bishop was also a no, correct, Supervisor Bishop?
Chairman Gould. Sorry for the confusion, but since it was my district, I wanted to make sure that I stepped up and made a motion to at least give it a chance. Sure. That's why. I didn't want to put it on the shoulders of another board member, so.
So the item does not carry.
The item fails. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 40. Anyone here to testify on item 40? Sir, if I can get you to state your name.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Lynn Robinson representing the applicant. We appreciate the support of your staff. We appreciate the support of planning and zoning. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Questions for the applicant? Hearing none. Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to testify on item 40? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on item 40. What's the pleasure of the board? I'm going to go ahead and move that item 40 be adopted.
second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item 41 is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 41. Anyone here to testify on the public hearing on item 41? Anyone here to testify on item 41? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on item 41. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 42 is a public hearing. Anyone here to testify on item 42? Anyone here to testify on item 42? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on item 42. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item 43 is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 43. And I have someone, Rit Wolf.
Yes, thank you. I'm just here on behalf of the ownership. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to testify on item 43? I'm going to close the public hearing on item 43. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. You guys appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 44 is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 44. Ralph Eaton.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ralph Eaton. I have a home in the subdivision, Lake Juniper, as well as some vacant property there. I did send Supervisor Bishop an email on Friday. I was a little bit late on that, so Chairman and Supervisor Bishop, I apologize for that. It's more of a, I was asked on the sheet there, are in favor or opposed. It's more of a confused state for me. So I did review the application that was put forth, and all the property owners were listed except for Mojave County. So Mojave County owns the property that the well site, the control building, and the other well site across the street are on. So if they own the property already and they own the distribution system, right? They own the roadways. Who's operating it? Who currently operates? Who has a lease or an agreement with Mojave County to operate that facility? I mean, I'm unable to find that. Maybe you can. Maybe staff knows. Maybe staff can answer that question for me. Because what I'm seeing here, I know with improvement districts, what comes along with an improvement district, right? It's assessments. So we know that. So we're going to be assessed, right, to bring things back up to code, which nothing's been looked at yet. We don't know if it is to code. It's actually, I believe right now it's operating, and I put this in my letter, outside of the ADEQ requirements, which are 15 homes or 25 full-time residents. I think both of those are exceeded right now. So if that is the case, I mean, what other items are going to be needed to bring this up to code and get it back in to ADEQ compliance? So that's one, right? That's one of the biggest ones to me is, number one, who holds the lease, right? Who has the right to access the Mojave County property and use the taxpayers' utilities, really? I mean, I don't know. That's the biggest question. Who holds the lease? And is the improvement district even necessary if Mojave County owns the property and owns the utilities that go along with it? So that's my spiel. That's where I'm at with it. So that's my biggest concern. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Gould, at some point I can answer those questions if you wish.
Okay, is that proper during the public hearing portion though, or after the public hearing?
How about we wait till after the public hearing? I can do
That's what I
that.
was thinking. Anyone else here to testify in item 44? Anyone else here to testify in item 44? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Attorney Esplin.
So I'm going to give a little bit of background. I'm going to answer this gentleman's question. First off, from a legal standpoint, there's nothing that gives Mojave County the authority to operate a utility, a water utility. There's no authority in Arizona that gives any county the authority to operate a water utility. We don't. There's not a single county in Arizona that does that because there's no law that authorizes them to do that. What the law does authorize is the formation of special districts, improvement districts, and those improvement districts are the political entities, the political governments that operate these utilities. There's also private businesses that do utilities as well. We know that, but I'm talking about if you have a government entity that's doing a water, it's going to be a special district. There's also cities that do that as well, so I guess I'm giving a little bit of exceptions there, I apologize, but in the rural areas, it's going to be special districts, and we see those, we have a number of them here in Mojave County. The most common ones here in Mojave County are the Golden Valley Improvement District, as well as the Horizon 6 Improvement District. Both of those are political entities that operate water for the citizens in that district, but those are not Mojave County. Those are separate political subdivisions. Even though the board here sits as the board of directors of those, it is still a separate political subdivision. So to answer this gentleman's question, Mojave County does not operate that water system right now. Right now, the people who are operating it is the private individuals in that area. Now let me go back now the history of this so you can understand why that's the case. Back in, even before 2000, when this subdivision was originally created, the original idea of the person who was forming the subdivision, the original idea is that this would be a private, either a private water company would operate the water or somebody else would operate that water. The subdivision failed. There was problems and issues with the subdivision. Then when that failed, when that subdivision failed, basically the roads and the biggest issue was the roads and the water. When that failed, there was a lawsuit that was filed. That lawsuit was filed against Mojave County. And that was in the early 2000s. I think Supervisor Lingenfelter probably remembers that when you were with the county. Supervisor Johnson is very familiar with that as well. He was here with the county when that was going on. That lawsuit was, the two main issues were the roads and also the water system. That lawsuit lasted for about 6 years. I mean, it was a protracted lawsuit. There was 2 different settlements, but at the end of the day, the settlement was that Mojave County would finalize the roads as well as the water system. And Mojave County did. In 2011 or 12, somewhere around there, Mojave County finished the water system. And when we finished that, we stepped away because we don't own that. We don't. We have no ownership of that. That was always the intention of that lawsuit. That was always the intention of the settlement, that those property owners would take care of it. And since 2012, they have. They've been operating it. There's been a group, usually 3 or 4 property owners that have been operating that system on their own. Whether it complies with ADEQ or not, we can't say because we're not a part of that. We've kind of looked at it peripherally to see if this is something that this district could do, but for the most part, it's been them and they've been doing it. Those property owners approached the Public Works Department and said, what can we do? Our suggestion was create a special district, create this district. And this district will take the ownership of that water system. Now, about the land and things like that, there are still some things that are in Mojave County's name. For example, the land where those pumps operate is on Mojave County name. It is. If you look at the assessor's website and this gentleman sees it, those are in Mojave County's name. There's also some uncertainty about who has quote unquote title to that water system because it was conveyed to Mojave County. It never got conveyed out. With this formation of this district, my recommendation, and I've talked to Public Works about this, is that we would clean these things up so that once the district is formed, we would make sure that the water system is in the district's name, not Mojave County in any way, that we would also convey the land. We would bring this back to the board, of course, the board would make that decision. The board would then convey the land to the district so that the district would be able to operate everything, similar to GVID operates their district or Horizon 6 operates their district. So that would be the purpose of it. So if the board approves this, the board would create the district, and moving forward, the board would sit as the board of directors for that district, similar, again, to GVID and Horizon 6. So that's the background. So currently, who leases? I know that was one of the questions this gentleman had, who leases? There is no lease in place. I've researched this extensively. There's no arrangement. Basically, the arrangement is the property owners are operating it, They're going to the property there. They're taking care of the system and doing all that, even though the land itself, the dirt itself, is in Mojave County's name. This is, from our standpoint, we recommend this for a couple reasons, but one of those is that we try to clean this up so that we can say, okay, this is the district and that this is not Mojave County, because it's clear Mojave County does not operate this water system. One of the things that the property owners has conveyed to us, one of the concerns that they've conveyed is that when there's so many people on a water system, at some point, then you have to go through the ADEQ regulation, and they're at that point right now. Prior to that, they didn't have enough numbers, but now it looks like they've breached that threshold. So that's why they're creating this, so that then one of the first steps will be to contact ADEQ and make sure they're in compliance with ADEQ regulations.
Mr. Eaton, does that answer your question?
Yes, I wanted to thank the gentleman for that explanation. I mean, that's kind of the point of the thing, right? It was a kind of a used car that got handed over, right? And now we're trying to hand it back, and that was kind of the confusion. So I do understand, and I do understand the laws too in Arizona about entities can't operate, government entities can't operate water services. So I understand that. I've researched that as well. So I do appreciate it. I think there's been some thought and some consideration given to it, and that was my point. So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I would just, the only thing I would echo or say to Mr. Eaton and the property owners is that if this is passed, that they do the same thing that the people in GVID do, or that they do in Horizon 6, that you communicate with the board, you communicate with them and say, hey, you know, we're proposing to do rates. Can you keep the rates here? Can you do this? Anything like that. We don't want an assessment, or we need an assessment, but we'll keep it here. Because in the future, that districts can do. They can do assessments, they can pass rates, and so stay informed with this board so that you can convey your wishes and what you want those rates to be, or what the assessment should be or not be.
Yeah, and I will say I was aware of everything when I bought the property, right, originally. So we actually drilled a well, and I was planning wells for my other property as well. I mean, just because of the confusion on the water system, I didn't want it to get to this point and then end up with no water. So I understand it. It's something that probably does need to happen, I believe, right? There's liability there for the county as well, too, somehow, some way, I'm sure. So, no, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Esplin, do they surrender their water rights as private property owners if they're inside of the district?
What do you mean? Water, like, could they still drill a well?
Correct.
I think so. To my knowledge, they still would be able to drill a well if they want and pump it and have their own water, sure. I think that's true in any district.
If it's different in Havasu Heights, but that's organized differently, it's not an improvement district.
Oh, it's not an improvement district?
No.
Okay.
And they took federal money also. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so there's an issue over whether they surrendered their water rights.
To my knowledge, for these particular property owners would not. I don't see how, I think they could still drill their own well and produce it for themselves. The problem would be if they tried to establish their own water company.
But they would still be subject to whatever ad valorem property tax or fee that they come up with to fund the district, whether or not, regardless of whether they had a well or not.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
If I could, I'm sorry for the sake of talking too much. If I can also add, just on the petition, there was a part there that didn't have about whether the district was within any within any public utility service areas. And we've confirmed, staff went to the Arizona Corporation Commission. By statute, you have to contact them and asked if there's any utility companies in that service area. There are not, there are none. So this is an area that is not served by any public utility. So you know that we've taken care of it. We've kind of buttoned up that part, so you know.
Thank you, sir. Further questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Johnson, any questions, comments? Supervisor Bishop, questions, comments?
No questions or comments, but I will make a motion that we approve this since it's in my district pursuant to ARS 48906. But my motion would be to approve the adoption of BOS Resolution 2022-141 to establish the proposed improvement district, and further to approve the petition to incur expenses for possible operation, maintenance, repairs, and replacement of the district water system, which was filed simultaneously with the petition to form the district.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 45. Madam Assessor.
Chairman and Board, hello. I'm here to answer any questions. I know that might be a little confusing. I had feedback in regards to our data request, and according to statute, we're supposed to do market rates, so we compare to other counties in our state, so we're comparable to them when it comes to our data requests. So that's why we did that. And if you have any questions in regard to my app program, I'm very excited about, and that is just another level of security for our taxpayers when it comes to their property and any change of address.
Madam Assessor, why don't you expand on that?
Okay, our app program, which is our assessor's address protection program, is to give a little bit of security to property owners that are concerned about people stealing their property, as you hear all the time on the radio. And with that, we found that a common denominator is always a change of address. And so this protects them by having a notary sign saying we will not have our address changed at any time unless they let us know with a notary. So it's a really great program, and we're the first one in the state that's going to be doing it, and hopefully it goes around everywhere so everybody feels more protected.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Assessor Kench, I just want to say there's been a few times when you've been the first county in the state to do something, and I just want to say that I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's always good to push forward, even if you're in government. You know, if you're doing things the same way as you were 5 years ago, chances are you're not an excellent operating organization. So you keep pushing forward.
Yeah, things change, and I did get a lot of people coming up to me asking, how do I protect my property? What do I do? I hear about people getting their property stolen from them. How do we do that? And so we came up with a solution. And I'm kind of hoping it goes everywhere because it's really easy. And I think people will feel more secure about their property being stolen.
Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Jeannie. There's the other fee that is going up from $1,000 to $5,000. Can you explain that a bit?
Certainly. It's really not from $1,000. Most of our requests were a $2,500 processing fee for that data. And a lot of the counties in the state have gone up. We are to do that. We're supposed to check every 3 or 4 years to make sure that we're in the same line with same counties of the same size. So that's what we're doing. We're going in line with Yavapai, Maricopa. I believe Brett has the list of the ones that we're comparing against. So he can give you the details on that.
Who uses that service?
Probably about no more than a dozen a year. We'll get requests from corporations that use our data to make money. And that's really what it is.
Okay, thank you.
So back to the protection plan. Can property owners come to your office and have the notary in your office notarize their form?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Can they mail that notarized form in, or do they have to show up in person?
It could be notarized. As long as it's notarized, then that's protected, and it can come to us. But they're gonna start with us with the form.
And then if they wanted to change their address, they would have to send a notarized address change form in to you.
The only way that address would be changed is if upon their death, and we get a death certificate, and then the family then owns it, or they come back and say, I want to change my address, and they notarize it yet again.
Sure. Good idea. Good job.
Thank you.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould? Gould, I make a motion that we approve the proposed changes to the assessor's fee schedule, incorporating adjustments to existing data request fees and adding address protection program fees.
I'll second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Let's see, item 46. Director Burley. Is this your last day?
Actually, Friday is my final.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you decided to spend your last day with us.
Though. Yes, Supervisor Gould, or Chairman Gould, members of the board, I did include a memo in the backup to try to answer some of those questions that were asked during the previous board meeting. So I definitely want to be available to answer any other questions that may be.
So where do they get their money from?
So it is federal funds passed through to the State Department of Economic Security and then passed through to another organization to manage the program itself.
Interesting. Any questions for Director Burley? Hearing none. Thank you, ma'am.
Certainly.
What's the pleasure of the board? Oh, you do have public comment. Tanya Dowson, come on up.
Good morning, Tanya Dawson, Mojave County taxpayer. The Senior Community Service Employment Program was created to assist low-income, unemployed individuals aged 55 and older find employment. The Arizona Department of Economic Security website basically says that unless you are a minority, a limited English-speaking individual, American Indian, or individual with great economic and special employment needs, you will not receive the same preferential treatment of the special interest group I just listed. This is wildly discriminatory. In this agenda item falls in line with the United Nations Marxist Agenda 2030. I've got an image on the scanner. 17 Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, Los Angeles includes the Senior Community Service Employment Program as goal number 8 in their progress report. In their, I lost my spot. In their progress report, Advancing United Nations Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The Senior Community Service Employment Program is actually listed in the United Nations U.S. country report inquiring what contributions to age-related policies the U.S. has made toward the implementation of Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Turn the page. So when you're playing with wealth redistribution, you are playing with fire. The United Nations doesn't recognize God-given rights as inherent and inalienable. They think they can bestow rights to their subjects. They have a plan to redistribute America's wealth and prosperity internationally. The United Nations believes the fruit of your labor is their property to distribute as they see fit. If they own the product of our time, energy, and talent without just compensation, they own us. The rules are changing under the Biden administration, and they're changing for the worse. Please be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chris or Darty?
Chris Rodarty, Mojave County taxpayer. I'm opposed to this item 46. This contract is between the Mojave County Department of Health and an agency whose name is a Spanish language title I cannot pronounce since it's in Spanish translated into English as the National Association for Hispanic Elderly. Per its website, this agency is, and I quote, committed to achieving social change by focusing on the needs of low-income minority and Hispanic older persons, thus impacting the Hispanic community and the nation as a whole. Why, oh why, as my mother used to say, on God's green earth, is Mojave County, Arizona, USA, contracting with these people? Aren't there better ways to care for each other? Why are we insisting on tagging along with the globalist 2030 agenda of un-American wealth redistribution, ageism, racism, and Marxism? How about looking to our families, churches, and private charities to care for our elderly poor? If wealth redistribution ceases, perhaps people will have more money to care for their families, friends, and poor by contributing to churches and charities of their own choosing, instead of being held at gunpoint by the IRS. Vote no on 46. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chairman Gould, if you wouldn't mind, could I answer a couple of, or make a few more comments?
Please do.
Thank you. So this particular program, our senior programs, is heavily reliant on volunteers, and we struggle to get them. And we need consistent volunteers. You can't just have people kind of entering and exiting a volunteer role like this to deliver meals and other things. This particular program fills a gap that otherwise would need filling by the general fund. So one way or the other, we need staff to manage and to provide the services for this particular program. And this is a great program that helps us do that. So I realize that we're looking at, we're trying to find volunteers for this particular program, but it's not like people are coming out of the woodwork to help us out either. So we're reliant on those folks. We have a limited budget. We try to stay in that budget. We try to limit our general fund needs for this particular program, and this is one way that we can do that.
Denise, you had one person working on this program?
Correct. We have one person, and there's actually three positions, but we only have one. So it tells you something else about trying to recruit people to work in our centers.
Sure. I'm going to make a motion to deny item 46.
I'll second, just to get a chance.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor vote aye. I vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
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 The motion fails.
Chairman Gould, I make a motion to approve item 46 as written.
Second.
That was okay. We'll call that a second. You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. I vote no.
No.
With your vote of 3 ayes and 2 nays, you've passed item 46. Item 47. Director Walsh.
Chairman Gould, members of the board, item 47 is a result of a call to the public from last meeting. The speaker at the call to the public had questions, comments regarding the Development Services Department's policy on not issuing electrical services separate from an approved use for the property. A little history on this property. The applicant has asked for a electric pole to install an electric charging station at the property. The property is zoned R1, which does not allow for an independent electric charging station for vehicles. The applicant was informed of this. He then requested that a electric service be allowed on the property. We informed the applicant that an electric service without an approved use or a permit for an approved use was not policy within the department, and explained why, tried to explain those reasonings. He disagreed and then came here to the board to present his concerns. Staff has, for as long as I've been director, and actually in speaking with Chris Ballard for as long as she had been with the department, not issued electrical permits for electrical services with, excuse me, without an approved use also being permitted at the same time. Some of the problems that have been associated with that is once the electrical service is issued to the property, a number of uses can occur on that property that are not allowed within the zone. On this specific property, as I mentioned, being zoned R1, really there's two issues at play here. The property being zoned R1 does not allow for an independent charging station. So the zone would not allow for that. But then the second part is the department's practice to not issue electrical permits for services without an approved permitted use for that property. I don't know if I think I've said that about as many times as I can, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. Included in the packet is a proposed policy that we're looking to implement that basically states that, and I'll save you the third time around.
So that way the policy would be a written policy rather than oral tradition?
That's correct.
Okay. Chuck DeShazer.
I do have a question before he leaves, if that's...
You can ask him the question from the podium if you want.
I've been told by 3 different employees at Developmental Services, including Scott, that an approved use for this electrical pole permit would be for pumping a water well. And I don't see that is any different than mine. Are you currently approving permits for a water well to be pumped?
Chairman Gould, the department has in the past with a well application shown that a well has been applied for to ADWR and approved to be constructed. We will issue an electrical permit for that well.
Okay.
Yeah, they do that.
The reason I'm asking that particular question is it's also not an approved use or a permitted use under R1, which I have up here on the podium. And basically what it comes down to is 12 weeks ago when they didn't have a policy, still don't actually have an approved policy for approving a power pole, they're saying that it's not an approved use, when in fact my claim is that if you read where it says, and uses normally incidental to single-family residences, that's, under my reading of it, would be no different than a water well pump or anything else. I feel that whether you agree or disagree, we're going to have electric vehicles being made by Ford, Chevy, all the different manufacturers, and what we're looking at is, you're telling me that nobody in Mojave County is going to have an approved charging station on their property, but this line right in the ordinance is talking about, you know, uses that are incidental to a normal residence. It doesn't say to a house, a home, a dwelling, which is listed up in the top section of that. So if it needs to be as a permitted use, and you don't agree with my reading of the ordinance itself, even though they're violating their own ordinance that they're proposing here with water wells, as I see it, under the same, because it's not listed anywhere in any of these items. I would propose that you put a letter F and put electrical charging stations for residential use for electrical vehicles. Going through all of this over the past 12 weeks that I've been denied a permit, I can't even put a permit across their desk because if I do, they won't accept it. By not accepting it, they don't have to deny it. So by not denying it, I have no place left to go under the law that I have right here. My only way to get to the board or the Superior Court as listed here is to get a denial of a permit that I've asked for. They're basically telling me that they have a right to turn down any permits and not even deny them in the first place, which in my opinion pretty much will be the same thing as, you know, if the sheriff's office doesn't want to approve a background check, they're not denying you your Second Amendment rights, but they're also not allowing you to buy a gun. Where are we going with this?
So can you go to the Board of Adjustments?
I have nowhere to go because I don't have a denied permit. They won't even accept a permit to be denied. So what am I supposed to do? Walk in there and say, oh my gosh, you know, what am I looking for? I can't get a variance because I don't even have a permit to get a variance on. They're not even accepting a permit at this point.
Director Walsh, can he appeal to the Board of Adjustments with?
Chairman Gould, staff has mentioned twice now to Mr. DeShazer that he can appeal to the Board of Adjustments for a determination on whether he can have a vehicle charging station in an R1 zone.
But,
so the
also,
fact that you won't accept the permit application from him does not prohibit him from going before the Board of Adjustments?
That's correct.
Okay, I have no evidence to bring before the Board of Adjustments because there's not even a denial. The other thing is I was given this Board of Adjustments paperwork on Friday by Scott, and it's not even up to date. He said, oh, this needs to be updated because they're still talking about, you know, back when you had 3 board members and different things, that they still don't have any place in writing that I see that is telling you that you can't be issued a power pole on your property in the R1 zone any place else. They're getting between me and the private power company, whereas the further I dig into this, the more I find out, you know, I can go buy a 1,000-gallon propane tank, put it on my property. There's nothing they can do about it, get it filled up. I got explosive gas just sitting there ready to, you know, blow up the county with. I don't have to go to the planning and zoning to go to Golden Shores Water District to get a water meter turned on. Why have they put themselves in between a private company and myself when they come out for, the only thing I'm asking for is a green tag. That green tag is to get the power pole. The power pole itself is installed by me at my cost. The ground rod is driven in by me, and they show up, they sign the green tag, they hang it on the pole to install electricity, but yet they don't know if I put the pole into the correct depth because they're not there when it's installed. They don't know if the ground is 1 inch in the ground or 8 inches in the ground or 8 feet like it's supposed to be. It's really not even an inspection that they're signing off on. And the electric company has absolutely no problem with providing me service because they want as many customers as they want. These guys are the only ones standing between me and
Last time I put in a temporary power pole, the utility company was the one that had specifications for the temporary power pole. It was inside city limits that I did it. But
Right.
but Unisource was the ones that, they were the ones that spec'd out what the temporary pole shall be made and how it shall be installed, and they inspected it for that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is I would ask that the board take away their power to deal with even a temporary pole, because I can't get a temporary pole. They've placed themselves in line with doing absolutely nothing except showing up, taking my money of whatever they want to charge me, and signing off on the green tag, because the power company, they hook up power to a temporary pole, which I can't even get because I have to go through the planning and zoning at this point. They show up, they hook up the power, and 10 seconds later, the whole pole burns to the ground or whatever. The county's not even responsible for anything, even after they've signed up. I don't understand why there's this green tag process, why I can't go to the power company, say, I'll pay you to install the pole, or I'll install the pole to your specifications. They're not even able to inspect the work that's done. But somehow, this is the only utility that the counties involved themselves with. And even on the new proposed policy that they wrote up 11, 12, 13 weeks into me being denied for the first time, they failed to mention, oh, you can put in a septic tank. I don't know how big a septic tank I might want 10 years from now, depending on the house size, because I don't need another house. I've been living for 22 years, and I'm looking to have a place on the pavement because I've gone through 24 vehicles because the road to my house is that bad. All I'm looking for is to have a charging station, which Mojave County or Mojave Charged is willing to help pick up part of the cost. That $1,000 rebate that they're offering through the Mojave Electric Co-op isn't going to pay for anything. It's only paying 50% of me installing a charging station, only for my own use. I'm not even looking for outside users, or I'm not going to rent it out or anything like that. They tell me that the only way I can get a charging station, according to their reading of the ordinance, is to build a house. I have to build a house first. And anybody that's familiar with electric vehicles knows you would not want to put an electric vehicle while it's charging in the garage to burn the house to the ground. That's why all these charging stations out here don't have covers over them. They don't have structures anywhere near them so that they're going to,
I've seen numerous garages with charging stations in the garage.
Yeah, numerous.
On residential
Yeah,
structures.
but the only time that you have problems with an electric vehicle as far as the batteries exploding is when you're putting electricity into the system.
Sure.
And it's safer to put it out on an open ground, where there's just a pedestal, like they have the Tesla charging stations over here by the powerhouse and over by the Carl's Jr. They don't have them with carports over them, even in the summertime, to shade the vehicles, because there's a possibility of the batteries exploding while they're charging.
Filter, you have a question? No. Okay. Supervisor Angus.
Okay, can I have Tim Walsh come up here for a sec? Okay, so you have to, in order to get one of these poles, there has to be a structure, there has to be a house. What is your reasoning? What is the reason that, Mr. DeSazier, you said no? What is the fear? What is the downside of it?
So not so much a fear, I think, sorry, Supervisor Angus, basically what we run into is the proposed use for this property. What he's proposing, a charging station on an R1 use, is not an allowed use for that zone. So basically a charging station is not an approved use for an R1 zone. So that's the initial issue is based on our zoning ordinance, you can't put a charging station by itself.
Even for your own use? As far as I understand, you're not going to be charging people to come. It's not going to be a commercial use. It's for you.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, I think, Tim, what she's asking, are there examples of where permits were issued for power pole and the use were not followed through on? I think that's the question in front of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Absolutely. We've seen numerous cases where a power pole has been issued as part of another project. Once the power pole was then installed, the remainder was not completed. The power pole was installed, and then the rest of the project was abandoned. Then there's a power pole there that's energized that is then supporting a use that's not permitted.
Like what?
We've seen that in many scenarios. A lot of times, one of the main issues that we see is with RVs. Once a power pole is on a vacant property, it's easy to pull on an RV and connect to that power without proper sanitary facilities or anything like that.
Okay, but if that happens, then they're cited and they have to leave. It's like, you're assuming that the applicants are going to do something nefarious. That's just, one of my concerns is that it's, as we go into the future with this electric stuff, we're going to have, we've just got to be able to explain it, I think, a little better, more than just, you have a house. But, I understand both points here, but I think we need to explain it better.
I'm being called a criminal before I even get a permit, is what it's coming down to.
Because if he ends up having
You can't have a three-way conversation going here because you're not on the microphone.
I'm sorry. Well, exactly. So this happens, you give people permits and then if they do it and they do something that's not in the permit or not legal, then we take care of it. So you're just sort of, it's like pre-crime.
Chairman Gould, if I may, I agree to an extent. I agree. Yeah, we don't want to have the assumption that everybody out there is going to do something wrong. That's not our intent. On this one, Mr. DeShazer informed us of his intent, and the intent was to implement a use that's not approved for the zone in which his property exists. I know electric vehicles are, they're becoming much more prevalent today than they were, 10 years ago. Similarly, if Mr. DeShazer wanted to install a storage tank and store gasoline in it and put a pump there, we would not allow that in this use either. So, there's certain uses, and even if that was just for his primary use, if he wanted, he mentioned the example of a propane tank. That would, a large propane tank like that wouldn't require a permit. Constructing anything like that would require a permit, and we would not issue that permit on an R1 use without the main structure or that primary use, which must be approved. So those are seen as incidental.
Let me interrupt you for a minute.
Yes.
So Tim, if I wanted to say, I live pretty far down a road, if I wanted to buy a residential lot closer to the paved road and my car ran on propane, on an R1 lot, I could not put a propane tank and make a propane fueling station on that land either, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. You can continue.
So that's basically the department's stance is the main purpose for which he wants this electrical pole is not an approved use for the property. The department's practice has been to not issue electrical permits, electrical services without that approved use, really not so much that we're assuming that everybody's a criminal, but more to guide that development so that the approved uses are implemented along the way.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you. I did think of a couple questions in there to the attorney and to you, Tim, as well. I think it's good that we're actually coming up with a policy. Alternative fuel vehicles, whether it's propane or electricity or, whatever else. It's probably going to be something that rural Mojave County has to deal with, and we have a whole lot of land out there. So it's probably good that we have a policy. Did you meet with the attorneys to make sure that the new policy satisfies all the requirements of Title 11, 1606?
I don't know that we, Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingfelter, I don't believe that we ran it through the attorney's office. No, I don't believe we did.
No. It's never a bad idea
Yeah.
to run it through civil. I mean, I think civil is kind of the best friend of every department in the county when you're thinking about putting out something that's going to be a law governing everybody else. So I'd like to see whatever happens today that you guys kind of just give it the run through civil. They might see some things that you guys didn't catch. And the second thing is, if the gentleman were to, whether or not this gets approved or not today, if the gentleman were to take the meeting minutes that are our official meeting minutes and go to the next level, would they be able to get their approval? That way, the gentleman mentioned he didn't have anything to take to the next level to get an approval. Would he be able to use those meeting minutes, Attorney Esplin?
I don't know, that's a good question. As we were talking about this, and I appreciate you asking these questions because I think there's some due process issues, some regulatory issues under Title 11. I imagine that he can use those. Certainly, they're public, they're available to the public when those minutes are available, and so he could use those. So I don't see why he wouldn't be able to use them. But I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I don't see why he would not be able to use them.
Sure.
Well, I understand his quandary.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I see it as well.
You take a fistful of air or you take something, right?
To be able to say, yeah, exactly. No, it's a good point. I mean, how does he get his grievance heard?
Right.
How does he get his redress? How does he get relief for what he's asking for? And I don't have the answer to that. That's something I'm going to look into because I think it's a good question.
It's a due process thing, right?
Yeah, it's how does he have his day in court, so to speak? It may not be court. It could be the Board of Adjustments.
No.
It could be somewhere else or something where he's
that's why we have in a Board of Adjustment is to sort of fill in the holes, right?
Yep. Yeah, but I don't know the answer to it. It's something I'll look into, though. It's a good question.
Gould, if I may, basically, as I mentioned previously, he would be able to to file an appeal to the Board of Adjustments, and we would present that to the Board of Adjustments without going through the formal process of receiving his application, denying it. And the reason we do that is more of a customer service purpose. We don't want to, if we know something is not able to be approved, we don't want to take their money, accept the application, and then turn it around and say denied, and then they're out that money. So if we know something that is not able to be approved under the current ordinance or under our practice, we will tell them, hey, this isn't, but if you would like to, you can appeal to the Board of Adjustments. And we've provided them that paperwork, mentioned it to them a few times.
Yeah, what I would say in follow-up to that is, I hope that he does do that. I think that one of the things that always drives me crazy is when you have somebody that hears what somebody's trying to do, an individual is trying to do on their own property, and then they open up the ordinance and they say, well, here's what the book says, and they kind of turn their brains off. No offense to anybody, but here's what the book says, and it's real black and white, but it doesn't say what is in between the lines and what's sort of evolving in the world and all those kind of things, right? And I think that's what the next level is for, to say, hey, I have a situation where it's not really covered or envisioned in the current version of our ordinance, and I want this exception, and this is why, and it's only on my property. So I think that he would have that available to him, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
You need to remember there's actually two distinct issues going on here. You have the fact we didn't have a written policy on the power pole issue, whether they would issue a permit for a power pole or not. And then you have the other issue is a charging station is not a
allowed use
on an R1 lot.
Yeah.
So you have two different issues here that just happen to be combined in Mr. DeShazel's issue.
Yeah, Chairman.
The fact that it was not a written policy, that's just unacceptable. That it has, all government policies should be written policies. It shouldn't have to be some oral tradition. And just generally, policies come to the Board of Supervisors to be approved and to decide whether, or how do we want to proceed? Do we want to, say, give them a power pole, and then when the people put an RV and dump a sewage on the ground or in a hole in the ground, then we go after them and it's an enforcement issue? Or do we not issue the power pole without the septic tank? You know, because that's what's happened in the past. That's something that the board should decide. But you have two distinct issues there.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
First, I would say I couldn't agree more. And I know that we've been talking about this at least a couple of board meetings, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable if you kind of swung back around and had civil at this thing. That's just my opinion.
And I would have a tendency to agree with that. Mr. DeShazer, you have some closing comments. I think we're going to...
I understand I'm limited on time, but who's going to pay the $540 fee to go before the Board of Adjustment because they won't even issue me a denial to start with? Because that's what the paperwork that they gave me on Friday says, is that $540 just to go before the Board of Adjustments for a $50, permit. I have it right here.
Well, you're challenging the use of the property under what's already been adopted. Well, there's no, the charging stations are not a listed use on an R1 piece of property. So that would fall on you.
Yeah, but neither is a pumping station for a well on the property, but they're giving those permits out, even though it's not listed under R1 either, is my point. People walk in all the time and say, I'm going to drill a well. I need a temporary pole, and they don't have to go fight it like I'm fighting it. I don't know why they're so adversarial on this issue. They're supposed to be there to help people that aren't in government to navigate through the process. And they've been of absolutely no help whatsoever of giving me a direction to go with this. They just keep pushing me back, like I say, 13 weeks now on something that they wouldn't even give me a denial on. So I had, a place to go, not to mention, I gave all 5 supervisors a letter through the clerk of the board's office on a slightly different subject. It has to do with this initially is I asked for their policy manual over there. And I have video of them telling me that they have no policy manual at Developmental Services. A week later, I get a call back saying, oh, could you come in and tell us what policies you want? And they came up with a page here of, it's 51 different items, 1,315 pages, and I picked out 9 of them. And there's absolutely no dates, there's no some of them are internal memos about, how the county's lost thousands of dollars, and some of them actually say, policies that were drafted but never adopted. So there's no index of where you can go to find out, good, bad, or indifferent, what they're going to be following on any given day, depending on who's in a job or who's not in a job. It's a shambles over there as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Mr. Walsh, do you have a policy manual that your department follows?
Chairman Gould, as you know, the Development Services has 4 different divisions. Each division has different policies that we have for each division. The Planning and Zoning division follows, for the most part, they've got three documents that guide pretty much everything that Planning and Zoning does, being the general plan and subsequent area plans, the zoning ordinance, and the land division regulations. Those are the policies, the ordinances that guide basically what the Planning and Zoning department does, or Planning and Zoning division does. Building department has the building ordinances that we follow that do that. For the most part, those are the main documents. There are subsequent policies that are issued here and there if various issues come up. When Mr. DeShazer requested a copy of all of our policies, we wanted to make sure that we got the right ones that he was looking for. We've got numerous pages for flood control, for environmental quality, and I mean, it could have cost a fortune on copying all of those various policies. So we contacted him, asked which ones he would like, whether it was be for the whole department or just the Planning and Zoning Division. He indicated just planning and zoning, so then we came up with all of the policies that we have within just the Planning and Zoning Division and made those available to him.
Is there a difference in the price between going to the Board of Adjustment, whether you've been denied or whether you did not have your application accepted?
No, in order to appeal to the Board of Adjustments, it's the one fee, the $500.
And that's the cost to call the meeting and have staff there and all that?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for
Chairman Gould?
Supervisor Lingenfelter?
I definitely agree that with all these things, there needs to be a written policy. And I'd really, I think whenever we're delving into some new area, that it's always a great idea to run it by civil, to make sure that it's going to be defendable and that all of the bases are covered, and two heads are better than one, only than the two heads are different, right? So.
Yeah. And definitely, Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, I couldn't agree, and I'm remiss in not passing it past legal. In reviewing the policy, it was a fairly simple policy, and we just missed sending it over to civil to have their review for it. Yeah, but we definitely will work with them and make sure that it.
Not to belabor the issue, but the gentleman mentioned the fact that we don't have a say-so in the non-exempt or the exempt wells. Is there a statutory reason why we don't do that? Or is that just a matter of policy as well?
I don't know if I follow the question.
So he mentioned that in order to install a well, to do all the things that are necessary for a well, less than 35 gallons per minute in a rural area like Mojave County, that Development Services doesn't really have a say or get involved in that process.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Lingenfelter, actually with a new well, if a new well application is submitted for parcels 5 acres or greater, the county is not consulted on it, but for parcels less than 5 acres, it would go through our Environmental Quality Department and really the purpose of that is looking at proximity to septic tanks in the area to make sure that well being drilled is not too close to an existing septic tank.
Is it only a land use requirement under 11.812 where that's where the 5 or more acres are? And I thought that was only for certain industries, but or is it 35 gallons per minute or greater, or 35 gallons per minute and less?
Supervisor Lingenfelter, I believe it's both. So if it's on a parcel less than 5, I would have to double check, but my understanding is if it's on a parcel less than 5 acres, residential wells less than 35 would need, and like I say, it's not us approving it, it's us making a recommendation to ADWR on whether to issue the.
Great, but I'm sure that after you meet with civil, all of that sort of stuff will be clearly outlined in the policy, right? To help people understand.
Absolutely.
Do I need a motion to continue this to the next meeting? Is that within my authority?
Chairman Gould, yes, we need a motion to continue.
I get a motion to continue this to the next board meeting.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I would motion that this item be continued to the next meeting to allow Development Services staff to confer with civil.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
May I ask Director Walsh a question?
Yes, Supervisor.
It appears to me what this gentleman wants to do, he's saying he's going to buy an electric car and he lives out on a bad road, so he wants to have a charging station basically in the Golden Shores area, in a residential area. So I'm guessing that would mean that he would have to bring his car there and charge it, and then have another vehicle there to drive home with, and then drive back. So wouldn't that be an open lot storage issue for us?
Yeah, that was the other thing I was thinking.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Johnson, if both vehicles, and double check with Scott, but I believe if both vehicles are currently licensed, they would not count towards open lot storage. So he would be able to leave one there, pick one up, as long as both vehicles remain licensed.
So you can store vehicles on a lot now as long as they're all licensed?
Currently, yeah, I've got my planning and zoning manager, Scott Holtree, going to come help me with that question just to make sure.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, depending on the lot size, you can have, in this particular lot size, you can have up to 200 square feet of open lot storage.
So even if there's no structure, no home or structure on the lot, you can store things on a residential lot?
That is correct.
Interesting.
Mr. Chair, I thought that was only for like 1 acre on RA lot. You have a residential lot, I thought you could store vehicles or boats or anything else there. Because you're saying if it's licensed, that means we can store boats there too?
Up to 200 square feet.
On any residential lot?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Bishop, you need to weigh in?
No, Chairman Gould, I have nothing to add.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mrs. DeShazer.
Try and get it in here, make one comment, actually two, before we move, or before you make the decision to consider this later on. I've got two questions then. If electric vehicle charging stations aren't an approved use on this zone property, how is Mojave Electric Company or cooperative offering these rebates to people? Have they issued any at all? What type of process does everyone in the county go through to take advantage of this offer? I don't know. It sounds like nobody can have one then, by what I've just heard.
Without a residential structure on the residential lot. So if you were to build a home on the lot that you own, then you could put the charging station in.
Would they have to check that electrical box there on the side of it and then get an approval from the county to do so, or could they just go ahead and
I'm not sure if there's a permitting I'm assuming you'd have, if it was an existing structure and you were going to put a charging station in, I'm assuming that requires an electrical permit.
So that's what I'm saying is, if it's not an approved use, how can you get a permit for electric
Because
if
it's not an approved use without a residential structure.
All right, so
you
that's the
could
qualification.
have a charging station in your garage.
Or not, or outside.
You can't have a
because of
charging
fire.
station on a pole.
Right, but they allow, Mojave Electric does allow for both, though, in their application. On a standalone structure on your property is one area that they say you can have it. But you've answered that question. I'm also concerned, though, that as you move forward in a few weeks, or whenever the next time it's considered, I don't know how I feel about asking this question for this use, and then having a verbal policy, which it was told to us as a verbal policy, then written up and put into place perhaps by that time. Is it fair to make up a policy after someone's asked for something and subject them to the terms of that now written policy? It just doesn't seem right that it wasn't written in the first place, and now we might be under that law, that direction.
If it was something that we had just decided to do,
right,
then it would be ex post facto.
Okay. But it's
the continuation of their existing policy that's been in existence.
But it was a verbal policy.
Their oral tradition was to not give power poles without a septic.
Right, and so now there's a new policy that they made up because of us, that's what they told us, that wasn't in effect, and by the time this all gets done, that may be a real policy, but is it retroactive to the person that asked for it and they didn't have the regulations in place at the beginning? I mean, we're fixing it now, and you're not getting what you asked for before we had it. Now, it just doesn't seem right to me to apply it to somebody who wants to do something, after they become aware that they need this written policy, which is great for anything to do with the government. That's my concern, is that this could happen to other people on other things. Anytime they don't like something, we're going to write up a policy. And can they just do that? Can they just make up a policy and say, now we have a written policy, and there's no approval process? It seems like this policy that I put up here 2 weeks ago has not been approved at all. It was, someone just wrote it down. It had Mr. Elcher's and the head of development services name up there, but did they write it up? I don't know, and it wasn't approved by anyone. So those are the questions I have going forward. Thank you.
As a challenger of policies myself in the past, I know that it was their policy. I can attest to that. You have a motion?
Yes.
Did we have a second?
No, sir. What's the motion? The motion is to continue to the next meeting.
You need a second? I'll second that.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. It's been requested that we take another 5-minute break, so we're going to take another 5-minute break. Agenda item 49. County Manager.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I hope we can get through this fairly quickly. The board considered this request during a previous board meeting. Arizona Department of Water Resources responded and informed Mojave County that they do not consider the Southern Greg as a separate subbasin, and that is why this item is back in front of you. The intent here is to modify Mojave County's letter that is requesting that ADWR consider designating the Walpi Basin as an irrigation non-expansion area without any conclusion, and allow the public hearing process to take place and feedback to be provided during that process.
Questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you. I would make a motion to approve.
Oh yeah, public. Hang on a second. We'll before we vote, I'll let you talk. Sorry. See if we get a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Take some public input. Mr. Hollins. Hung in here so long, I hate to blow past your opportunity for public comment.
I know I was getting confused there, and I thank you for the timely break there also. One thing I disagree with this to an extent. We've tried for like the last 3 years of getting RMAs and AMAs and now INAs, and while we've been waiting for that to happen, we've did like paralysis by analysis. We haven't did anything. We need to get the people again. If we're not doing the maximum we can do to put the water in there, that's the problem. Is there's no water in there. We already know that we're only replenishing half of what we're taking out. So the problem is getting the water in there. And if you've seen the rain in the last 2 days, all that water that went down the wash is wastewater. So if we're not getting as much of that into the ground, why we want to restrict somebody for taking it out, and then we have the money to improve these water systems and build new wells, but we don't have the water in there to take out in the first place. So why can't we get together and put the water into the ground so it's there for everybody, farmers and everything? The farmers are out there, the ones that were being complained about, are growing trees. They're growing food. They're making oxygen, they're cleaning the air with the trees. They could be doing much worse. And most of them aren't just flood irrigating and stuff like that. A lot of them have the micro drip systems and stuff like that, so they're making good use of that. But are they making good use of the water that fell on the ground that they're watching run down the wash? Are they putting that into the ground so it's there? So trying to get all these restrictions put on them without doing the most that we can, and we can't do it obviously all at once, it just doesn't make sense to try to put restrictions on something that we could at least be working on to fix. You know, if you're anyone familiar with permaculture, it says plant the rain. You do that first. So that's what we should have been doing all along, is planting the rain so it's there to use for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Mr. Hollins, if I might ask just a couple of questions to you. Were you able to catch the Development Services presentation on the USG mod flow model and the 2022 data, the fact that, what the model produced about how many acre feet they're estimating coming out versus the recharge numbers, and how those are increasing, the delta between those two numbers are increasing, the total number of agricultural acres that we think exist over the Wallapai Basin, and they ran with, I think it was like 4 scenarios where it showed where we are now, a couple of different growth scenarios all the way up to a full build-out scenario. Did you catch that?
I did.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple other briefings in here. Some say we got 50 years, some say we have 150 years.
Sure.
And we're allowing the developers to determine that they have 100 years just by guessing, I guess. So we're still building more houses, but we're not doing them efficiently. We're not using the water that's falling on our head. It's just bouncing off, and now we want to restrict people from doing things and taking the freedom away as far as
I take your comments, and I think that you're absolutely right. Everything that I've heard you say has me believe that you think, just like I think, that we did an all of the above approach to water, right? Where I have a problem as a Republican and as just one individual member of this board is, so right now, the county, being a rural county, we don't really have a funding source or a tax base to invest millions of dollars of public funds into recharge projects. And especially, okay, so how are you going to ask the board to go out and ask the public to fund multi-million-dollar recharge projects when on the other side there's absolutely zero protection for how much is pumped out by who? So you're asking your taxpayers to subsidize basically a group that's going to be pumping as much water out, and there's no limits. They don't have to meter it, they don't have to monitor it, they don't have to report it. So I don't think that I would feel comfortable right now, the way things are under the law, asking the taxpayers to go out and fund or cover multi-million-dollar recharge projects when there's no limit to who gets to pump that water out after it's recharged. Does that make sense?
It does, but if they're going to do that now, are the people who are already pumping it going to be grandfathered in so they can just continue pumping it anyway? That would be one question I would have.
Yeah, and that's really what we're trying to use as the county. We're trying to use the tools that we have at our disposal under statute. And I do think that there has been some things that have changed. The things that have changed are the water model that was built by the USGS. We didn't really have a lot of good data. Now we have several years of data in 2022. I mean, that started in 2017. The model was produced, and the first run of that report was 2019. So we're a couple of years into it. We're going to keep running that model year over year. So we have that data. I've always thought that this problem is going to be solved with data. We have to have the good data. So we have as much data as we can. And I think that you go to the INA, if the INA If we're successful this time, God willing, if that doesn't do the trick, then we have other tools under statute as well.
So while we're waiting on this to happen, and I'm not talking about doing county multi-million-dollar projects to put water in the ground, because every individual out here that owns property can put water into the aquifer by simple methods. You'll have less damage because so much water is not going down the washes and eroding the land. We're everybody's scraping their property off, so the water can't soak in anyway. I don't know why they moved to the desert if they're just gonna destroy the desert flora and fauna, but it's their property, I guess, but it doesn't help the situation, and we're not teaching and training those people and giving them the ability to do that. There's no incentive for them to do it. And I know that it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people is going to do 80% of the work. So, but we're not even attempting to get us, me, and other people that live here that are dependent on that water, plus the food that they're growing. We're doing very little. I don't know why we can't do two things at one time. There's not one answer. It's kind of like the fuel situation. One thing is not going to replace everything. It's going to take a concerted effort of different things. The farmers got to work with you and us, because just because you have the ability to do something don't mean you should do it, unless you're doing your share to put the water back into the system before you take it out. Are they doing that? I don't know.
Right. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it so ordered. Let's see, item 50. County Manager.
Mr. Chairman, board members, you have a copy of this letter in light of the historic, at least for our generation, of the drought and the water surface elevation at both Lake Mead and Lake Powell. This letter was sent to the ADWR recommending and requesting that they consider those conditions related to any additional transfer of water from the Colorado River anywhere away from the river communities, and that they, as they prepare a plan to submit to the Bureau of Reclamation as to what Arizona is going to do to preserve these lakes and the Colorado River, that they include that condition into their plan. And we're asking the board to ratify and approve and support that letter. Thank you.
Questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Langenfelter.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Let's see, 52.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Langenfelter.
If I may, for the sake of time, and I was also hoping to get some information from the Kingman Tourism folks, Josh Noble, but he was on vacation, so if it wouldn't, if it would be all right with the board, I'd like to continue this to the next meeting, unless you guys would like to continue.
Is that a motion?
You state that in the...
It's a motion to continue the item until next
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion?
She sat here the whole meeting.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Number 53, Supervisor Langenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I put this on just short and sweet. The The adopted rules of order prevent members from impugning the motives of fellow board members. There was a comment against me that appeared in a Kingman Minor article, and I just think that what you allow to occur unchallenged, you encourage to continue. So I just wanted to put this on as a simple statement, and I look forward to maintaining that level of professional decorum during our board meetings, as we are the individuals that set the example and the standard of conduct. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No action required.
No.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Johnson.
You know, we've allowed our business meetings to become town halls, and at times they resemble a Jerry Springer show. Rude gestures, childish and offensive name calling seem to now be the acceptable behavior. Ideas and thoughts are brought up that have absolutely nothing to do with our county responsibilities. In my opinion, this has led to the inability to attract qualified employees to fill vacancies, the retirement of our senior personnel, employees who no longer enjoy their work. I agree with what Supervisor Lingerfelter is saying, but I think unless we get control of the whole board, we might as well just leave it as a Jerry Springer show. That's all.
Any other comments? Hearing none. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. And thank you, Supervisor Lincolnfelter, for putting this on our agenda. I think it's very important that we occasionally review our ethic and our commitment to be independent in our decision making. I believe in transparency, and I hope that we can all make the commitment to each other to be transparent. But in this particular case, I simply asked a question, and the question was answered. That should have been the end of it. The question asked was a legitimate question. It was not a personal attack. The question was not disrespectful in any way. In fact, Chairman Gold, you didn't interject, nor did the Deputy County Attorney, who was our parliamentarian. No one called for a point of order. The supervisor answered the question in great detail and was not questioned any further. As far as I'm concerned, that was the end of it. And why it's on this agenda has me a little bit baffled. But, you know, the question was one that had been asked numerous times by constituents from both District 1 and District 4. And I gave Supervisor Lincolnfelter the opportunity to tell the constituents whether or not there was anything that he wanted to share. He made his comments. Case closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Hollis, you have a public comment?
If I do, thank you, Chairman. I think you guys do an excellent job of putting up with listening to us, speaking to you. I have trouble sitting out there sometimes listening to some of the comments and stuff that don't seem to be appropriate for the situation. And I see a lot of blame on things, wanting to, Marxist this and that. You guys, every one of you up there is a Republican. You still represent all the people in the county, whether we're independents or Democrats. That's why it's America. So hopefully people will be respected of. I mean, there's always emotion gets involved in some of these things, and our views are not always the same as yours. But again, we got to work together, and you can't work together with somebody if you're calling them names and stuff like that. So if somebody is disrespectful to the board, are you going to do anything to help them? Me, I would, what the law required, that's what I would do. Other than that, beat feet out of here and go talk to somebody else, because you're not helping the situation. Thank you.
You catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
appreciate Supervisor Bishop's comments. And again, all I'll say is that I placed this item because her quote appeared in the Kingman Minor. And there were repercussions for me. That's why I put this on. And I also put on a section of our meeting minutes where she prefaced her statement and said, I may be out of line here. So I'm not going to make this bigger than it needs to be. All I'm trying to do here, the only form of relief is to reinforce our adopted rules of order, where you don't impugn the motives of your fellow board members. I don't believe that it was constituents that pressed this issue with you. And my cell phone number is on my county business card. So if anybody has a problem or an issue or a question, please feel free to call me. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we're adjourned.